Today, we are going to tour one of the largest Jane Austen collections on Reddit, YouTube, or anywhere else. In fact, after hours of research, I've not been able to locate a single personal collection anywhere online that is as large as this one. You're about to experience Jane Austen in nearly every format imaginable. Reading copies and display copies, Oxfords and Harvards, Everyman's and Folio societies, annotated editions, cultural editions, editions imported from the UK, companions, biographies, letters, juvenilia, facsimiles, movie tie-ins, pull-out replica letter editions, manga and Marvel comic adaptations, parodies, puzzles, and books about Austen's book covers, art, and afterlife. Plus, you learn about how even standard editions of Austen's novels differ based on the unique introductions that are commissioned for each one of them. And the collection doesn't stop there. Danielle, who has a degree in English and a background in publishing, and who has won multiple prizes for her book collecting achievements, has also put serious time and study into tracing the literary genealogy of Jane Austen. One of the major questions Austen readers ask after they finish reading all of her novels is this: what do I read next? There are two major answers: authors who came before Austen, who influenced her, and authors who came after Austen and were influenced by her. You'll learn about who are the best authors and which are their best books in both of these categories as we tour Danielle's bookshelves. Alongside all Austen, Danielle also likes to read classic mystery and detective fiction, especially Sherlock Holmes, Agatha Christie, Dorothy Sayers, and Wilkie Collins. And beyond that, her shelves are full of the kind of books you would expect from a serious English major's home library. Shakespeare, Dickens, the Brontes, big college anthologies, biographies, reference books, and many works of classic fiction. Before we jump in, just a quick note that there's some bonus resources that go along with this bookshelf tour in the first link in the description. There's a book giveaway, plus you can download all of the high-resolution photos of Danielle's library. You'll also get a resources spreadsheet, which will give you links for where to find some of the key books and other resources we talked about in this video, including the online course about Jane Austen that Danielle took through Oxford and that she mentions later on in the tour. You'll also get my classics resources spreadsheet, which collects in one place all the key details for the major facing page translation book sets, like the Loeb Classical Library and other similar sets from Harvard University Press, as well as other publishers of facing page translation libraries. You'll also get a free book where I gathered all the best advice about how to manage your library and how to improve your reading from the 55 plus hours of bookshelf tours I've conducted over the past couple of years. Just click the first link in the description to get all of these free bonus resources. Also, if you'd like to do a bookshelf tour with me, please email timothy@timothykenny.com. Lastly, a big thank you to all of my students for your continued support that makes these long-form bookshelf tours possible. There are 2 courses I teach that may interest you and are most relevant to the books we talk about in this tour. The first is my self-directed learner course, which will help you build all the skills required to pursue lifelong education through all the key steps of self-directed learning, like learning project organization, skill investing, research, reading and annotating, note-taking, memorizing, and putting your learning into action directly or through a program of deliberate practice. The other course is called Lexicon and is designed to help you build your vocabulary in the English language to a very advanced level. You'll learn how to break down words to their essential elements, how to study special categories of words where you can most improve, and how to develop your ability to use multi-word units and how they are an essential part of mastering English. Please click the second and third links in the description to learn more about these 2 courses. If you'd like to learn more about my other courses, programs, and learning tracks, and how you can support the production of these bookshelf tours, please click the 4th link in the description where you can view my complete course catalog. And now, let's get into the bookshelf tour with Danielle. Okay, so Danielle, why don't we start off with just talking a little bit about how you've organized your library here?
Sure. So we only moved into this house about a year ago, and before that, most of my books were very sadly living in bins in the basement, and I still have some in the basement. But with our new house, we had some new space, and we finally busted over to IKEA and got some Havstas. I like the Havstas a bit more than the Billies because they are made out of pine and not the fake wood, whatever MDF, I think it
Yeah.
is. Anyway, so the majority of my books, there are still some in bins in the basement, but the majority of the books are now in our living room. And I do know it's not popular to have your books not arranged by, alphabet or by author or publisher, but since they are a core part of like our living space, I wanted to arrange them in a way where they look really nice. And so I leaned a bit more into organizing by color, but my core shelving philosophy is I like each book to have a relationship with the book next to it, whether that's a bit of color, whether that's like an author or they're the right size or like even the font of the text on the spine is similar. I just like each book to kind of have a relationship and then they sort of kind of create their own flow. And then even I shoot for a flow going up and down so that my books are here and they're on display, but they also like look nice and I'm not detracting from, like, my family's living space, I guess. And, I don't have so many books where I can't easily find them either, so it's never been an inconvenience, like, "Oh, no, I don't have this alphabetized, so I don't know where to find it." I mean, I'm looking at them every day, so I know where they are when I need them. So, it's not a very complicated system, and whenever I get a new good-looking books, it it causes for some rearrangement, like but it's fun. I like rearranging books. I've been doing it since I was a little kid. So, this is the current look, and maybe in a week or 2, I'll get tired of it and rearrange it all again.
Maybe you could talk a little bit about your background and how you
Oh,
got started reading and through your higher education journey.
sure, sure, sure. I would say I've been like a book collector since I was a little kid. I'd get the Berenstain Bear books, and they'd have the pictures of all the other ones in the back, and I'd be super into going, I don't have that one. I need to go get that one. I don't have that one, but we have all of these, and that was really cool for me. And after that, I moved into Babysitter's Club, which was equally exciting. But I guess I didn't my journey into book collecting got a bit more serious as I began to read more serious stuff, if that makes sense.
Could you just say a few words about Babysitter Club? Because I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, the Babysitter Club series. Very, very big in the mid-90s. It was about some, like, early teenage girls getting together and forming a club where they babysit and have babysitting adventures and excitement. It was a very big deal. Pretty much every millennial woman has read or owned or both, Babysitters Club books. They actually made it into a movie. I don't think I liked the movie, but I've seen it. But, so yeah, Babysitters Club. But,
I
when
thought it was an actual book club, so
oh, no, no, it wasn't an actual book
sounds
club.
like a kind of a good idea for a book club.
Yeah, it
Okay.
was a series of books. It was, they were good for what they were. The mysteries were actually very good for what they were, surprisingly, but, um, after that, my book collecting life changed probably when I was about 9 or 10 years old when my grandma gifted me a copy of Anne of Green Gables, and I fell in love with that book, and after that, every time we'd go to Barnes& and Noble, because that was where we shop for books, I would, like, check out to see if there was another Lucy Maud Montgomery book I hadn't had yet, and so I started getting all of those, and then my next big step happened in middle school when one of my awesome middle school librarians was like, "You should read Pride and Prejudice." And I read Pride and Prejudice, and that was like I didn't know books could be that good, like and that was really my journey into getting into classic literature more so. Like, I read Anna Karenina when I was 14, probably not a good choice, do not think I was ready for it, but I read it, and, like, I kept chasing that high of reading Pride and Prejudice, like, I need to find more books that are as good as this book, and ultimately just being a book person kinda continued on until, I ended up with an English degree at the University of Minnesota, so got to read books and write essays for college, which was, like, the best, because what's more fun than that? And, after school, I did ultimately end up working in publishing, not in a very exciting branch, and didn't actually get to do any fun reading for it, but it sounds super cool to be like, yeah, stereotypical movie things. English major, works in publishing, right? But so that's kind of my journey. I've
Hmm.
always loved books, loved buying books. Just kind of was actually talking with my husband about this today that I just find it so fascinating how book collecting has really like shaped the world. Like, because when, for example, Amazon is this behemoth company, but it started with books. And I was there when it started with books because I would ride my bike to my aunt's house and shop on Amazon for Lucy Maud Montgomery books that I couldn't find in the store. And and I would use her credit card and have to pay her cash to buy these books, but it was an amazing thing for me. Like, it opened up the world where I could get all these books, and I think there was, um and, and Half.com was a great place to buy books back in the early days of internet commerce, and that was, I think, eBay's website before eBay had, like, a buy it now option. You went to eBay for auctions, and you went to Half.com to just buy things outright.
Mm.
So and eBay's a huge thing too now, and it's, like, so much of, like, commerce as we know it now is rooted in book shopping and book collecting. So, yeah, the Lucy Maud Montgomerys were my first big thing, but I've always, if I love a book, I want to own the book because I did not understand what public domain was and how most books, old books, were free on the internet until it was too late to turn back. So that's kind of where we are with the book collecting. If I love a book, I own it. I can't say most of my books probably have a lot of intrinsic value, but they have a lot of emotional value, and obviously, I'm just nutty about what they contain in and of themselves. Oh, that right there, that's the very first Anne of Green Gables that my grandma got me. Um, we can pop it off the shelf later, and you can see how my dog ate it. There's a bit of the damage from the dog eating it, so there's a lot of words explaining my book background.
So maybe we should start with Jane Austen, and you can say anything more you'd like to, maybe where you went after Pride and Prejudice, what you like about her work, and anything else you'd like to add.
So after Pride and Prejudice, I did end up reading all of Austen, she is my favorite author, I think. Um, you just can't you just can't beat Austen for humor, really. Like, I love the tone, um, and, like, when my very first copy of Austen of Pride and Prejudice, I underlined all my favorite things, and, I was a teenage girl, so I would have expected to have been, like, the romantic things, but the thing with Jane Austen is she wasn't very romantic, and people think she is because you watch the adaptations, and they all end with this big clincher of a kiss, but the books aren't like that. More space is given in Austen to, like, proposals going bad, like, horrendously bad. In Pride and Prejudice, the main character, male protagonist, Mr. Darcy, proposes to, the female protagonist, and it's a disaster, and that gets, like, a whole chapter. And when he comes back at the end of the book and his proposal is successful, it's actually given in summary, kind of. Like, it doesn't get much space. And, Sense and Sensibility, like, she undercuts the romance in that one with a joke. With Northanger Abbey, she undercuts it with a joke. Mansfield Park, she undercuts it with a joke. Like, that one's particularly good. Like, it's something along the lines of, as soon as Edward, as soon as enough time had passed for, um, Edmund to have decided that soft eyes were preferred to bright sparkling ones, that's when he proposed to Fanny. And so, yeah, anyway, going back, so a teenage girl, you'd expect to have underlined all the romantic bits. I'm underlining, like, Mr. Bennet's sarcasm, and that's something I love in books. I love wit, like real wit, not I don't know. I'm explaining it badly, but I love books that make you laugh, but like really laugh, like laugh in a, oh, I get that. Like it makes you think. Like you have to think about it to get the joke. I don't know. But yeah, but Austen's my favorite. I just don't think she can be touched. And every time I read a book where I'm like, that's probably just about as good as Jane Austen. Then I go back and read Jane Austen and it's like, no, no, it wasn't. It was fun to pretend. So yeah, the Oxfords that you're showing
Yeah.
now, I was I'm very lucky in my husband. He gifted me a Jane Austen course through Oxford University. It was really great. And so, a lot of that course's material was based on the introductions for all the Oxford versions of the book. So I'm like, I'm gonna have to go out and buy the Oxford versions because I need them for class, even though the professor digitized the introductions and I did not need to buy them for class. I'm like, I'm gonna need to buy them for class. So, I actually, the Austens, I think all of them except for, I think the teenage writings, I got used in a set. The Pride and Prejudice has a bit of water damage on it, but I got a really good deal on it, so I was pretty pleased. But the introductions in the Oxford editions are incredible pieces of scholarship.
Wow.
They're amazing. When it comes to my books, if I buy multiple copies of a title, it's because I love the cover and I wanted to get another cover, kind of like how you collect art. I collect covers. Or a lot of times I'm chasing down introductions and scholarly material because when you're not in school anymore, how are you supposed to learn about what you're reading and understand the context and maybe just get a different perspective on the material if you're not buying editions with really excellent supplemental materials? And so, have to obviously recommend the Oxfords for that. Like, if you wanna learn about what you're reading, the Oxford editions are the way to go.
What is this? Do you know the title of the course that you took?
Oh, I don't
Because I know people are gonna want it. I can follow up with you about that
I think
afterwards,
it was
but
pretty basic.
okay.
It was all online. I think it was something just like Jane Austen.
Yeah.
It was
Okay.
really it was a very basic thing, but they do continuing education courses, and anybody can sign up for them out of any background, and the professor for the Austen course is Octavia Butler, was when I took it, and she's pretty famous in Austen as, like, an Austen scholar, so they didn't, like, just hand it off to any, like, TA. They brought in the big guns, and it was so cool. I got to write essays.
Well,
So that's the Austen. I did actually alphabetize these for the sake of people who care about that, but, if you're gonna read Austen, it a lot of people read Austen, and then they go, "What do I read next?" Like, "What is next?" And, a lot of the times, Burney, gets suggested because there's a lot of evidence that Austen was influenced by Burney. So, the next 2 are Camilla and Evelina? I'm not really sure how to pronounce it. You can tell that they came from the era before, I think Austen really kind of revolutionized how novels were written. Um, Burney is still kind of in that sort of era where it's a bit more melodramatic, it's a bit more. Like, Austen kind of hit that sweet spot between the melodramatic era that came before her and the Victorian era, which came after her, which was also big into big feelings and big events. So, I didn't love Burney in the same way, but I'm glad I've read them. It's always good to know where your, favorites were, what inspired your favorites and kind of, just sort of the evolution of literature. There's three by Wilkie Collins, one of my favorite authors, I think. Um, Super underrated in the canon and kind of overlooked a bit. But I think Wilkie Collins is just so fascinating because he loved women. Like, he loved women. For people who don't know, I think he had two common law wives with, like, two families running at the same time. And a lot of his, um, novels, they're social issue novels, but they're also sensation novels. So they're kind of a lot of fun because there's, like, a mystery and there's drama, but he also, like, cared about issues. Um Yes, they make for great reading. No Name, for example, I always feel is like, what if Marianne from Jane Austen's Sense and Sensibility just was, like, bent on revenge and fixing the wrongs that had been done to her? And that's how it reads, and it's great, like, and it's really fun to read novels by a Victoria era man who cared deeply, apparently, about women's issues. His No Name, for example, is about how children who are born out of marriage can lose their inheritance even if their parents wanted to give them that money. Um, The Law and the Lady is um about a finicky bit of Irish or Scottish law, I think? I don't quite remember. A lot of them are about, like, finicky little things with the law that Collins thought were wrong, and so he writes a whole novel around the bit of the law he thinks is needs to be fixed or corrected. So they're fun, they're good reads. So, we got 20 Years After. Um, I This is embarrassing as a book person to admit, but I've never read The Count of Monte Cristo. In fairness to me, though, I read, I think, the entire Three Musketeers series, which is 5, like, real thick books. So I've had my fair share of Dumas. I think at some point I'll read The Count of Monte Cristo, but we're not there yet. But he's a great writer, but totally you can tell he was paid by the word or the sentence or something 'cause they are thick. Um Elizabeth Gaskell is next on that shelf. She's another, "Hey, what do I read after Austen?" Let me read Gaskell. She's great. I think she's also super overlooked, especially kind of in comparison with the Brontes, who were more of her contemporaries. She actually wrote, Charlotte Bronte's biography, but North and South is a great, great, great book. It's wonderful. I think I have, like, 4 or 5 copies of that one. It's such a great story, and I respect Gaskell similarly to Austen in that well, she was Victorian, but she doesn't have that same sort of melodrama, like, North and South is a heavy book. A lot of bad stuff happens in it, and she still ends it with a joke, and I respect that. I'm like, "Girl, great job." And it's a funny joke too. It's sassy, and you don't expect it, and it just leaves you smiling. My The adaptation of that is very famous. It's very popular period drama, and they changed the ending to make it all kissy, and I'm like, "No, the ending in the book is so much better, it's funny." The joke is better. We got Prisoner of Zenda, which is just a fun adventure novel. Radcliffe, famous Gothic novelist, also an influence of Austen, especially you can see that in, Northanger Abbey, and it's mentioned in Emma specifically. So you think Jane Austen is just kind of a fun little trivia book. Doctor Thorne by Trollope is another what you read after Austen book. He kind of strikes the same tone, sort of like the narrator having a kind of an ironic tone about everything that's going on, and if someday I'm out in the world and I run into somebody who I can say, "But Frank must marry money to," and they get the joke, that would make my life, like, awesome. Castle of Otranto is another Gothic novel that, I think is referenced in Northanger Abbey or was it was a very popular Gothic novel that was a send off in, Northanger. And then I've got 2 Zolas. I think everybody should read The Lady's Paradise. It is an incredible piece of fiction. I can't state that enough. It tells the story of the rise of the department store in like turn of the 1800, 1900 century France, and how it crushed local businesses. And it talks about how like women and specifically are manipulated in these stores, like how consumerism is manipulative. And there are just so many parallels to like internet shopping and consumerism today. And I feel like nobody talks about it. I'm like, you gotta read this book. It's so good. And and it also has the main character is so fascinating in that because she's getting crushed by this life, by the department store, and she can't look away. She still wants to be part of it. It's an incredible book. I could babble a lot about the contents of books 'cause I'm like, I love the stories more so. And overall, the Oxfords, they're again, great introductions, but in and of themselves, I can't say they're probably too interesting. And then sticking out there at the end is an older copy of Shamela by Joseph Andrews and Shamela by Henry Fielding, who was one half of my favorite literary feud. The feud between Fielding and Samuel Richardson, because Fielding thought Richardson was like a pretentious stuffed shirt. And so he wrote all these novels in response to Richardson's very sincerely felt novels. And I'm on side Fielding because he's funny. And I had to read Clarissa once, and I'll never forgive the universe for making me read that book because it's like this big. But yeah, so Team Fielding. Everybody should read Tom Jones too. It's a great book. So moving on to the next shelf, we got more Elizabeth Gaskell. Um, Sisters in Crime was a great little collection. The Semi-Attached Couple and the Semi-Detached House. I actually have a few copies of that book. Emily Eden is another one of what do you read after Austen? And she's really overlooked. She only wrote these two novels. I think it's like the original Jane Austen fan fiction. You can tell that she deliberately was trying to imitate Austen's tone. And I think a lot of her correspondence has survived, and it's kind of um, no secret that she admired Austen greatly, so it really was a deliberate attempt to get the same tone, and she succeeds really well. I think in the Semi-Attached Couple, there's one of my favorite lines in all of literature, which was about description, and the narrator writes, "This house is so beautiful, it deserved a description, but what's the point of writing something that no one will read what's written once it's written?" I'm like, "Yeah, right?" So she knew what was up. I think I'll get into it later. Another copy of that book's going to pop up later, and it has a bit more of an interesting story to it. Next is a couple of biographies about Teddy Roosevelt, my favorite president. And bookish people ought to know that Teddy Roosevelt famously read a book every day and could speed read and recalled the contents perfectly.
Well,
And isn't that amazing? That's one of I think that comes up in Theodore Rex. Even when he was a president, he would read a book a day and he could retain it all. So it's just incredible. It's a he's my favorite president, but these biographies just in and of themselves are extremely well written, great, um, great sources, a lot of primary accounts, and I think really importantly in biography, not a lot of opinion. They're very fact-based, which I like. Next is Into Thin Air, everybody's favorite nonfiction book, is super compelling, super sad, super compelling. Then I've got Bridget Jones. I do read some modern things. Next, Game Without Rules. Very, very underlooked. I think a book of short stories, all with about the two same characters, but it is they're spy thrillers. Really good stuff. Michael Gilbert, believe, was a lawyer, and he would write his books on his commute in and out of, I think, London every day, and that was the only time he wrote. And I guess it worked for him because Game Without Rules is excellent. And
There's
I've
some
got
interesting, I don't know if you have any thoughts on it, but just in terms of Teddy Roosevelt and his time at Harvard and his influence on Harvard, I always thought that was kind of an interesting part of his story.
oh, I don't think I might not recall that particular. I do know he was didn't he work for the student newspaper, maybe?
I don't remember really much of the details, but I think he also had an influence on Harvard after he graduated, maybe a decade or two later. But it just came to mind as you were talking about those.
Yeah. Yeah, like his biography is fascinating. I mean, I think probably the life story of anybody who becomes president is going to be interesting because that's not a very typical life plan, but he just had so much that he did and achieved. And actually, I took it out for the pictures, but he actually lives by his biographies on the bookshelf typically. There he is.
Oh yeah, wow.
Got the GI Joe. So yeah. So back so the next set of books, we have just a one Penguin classic in there. It's the right size and the right color. And then we're getting into my vintage collection, which after The Name of the Rose and The Importance of Being Earnest is, I think, entirely Stella Gibbons books. Um when I was working, I had to travel for work. I wandered into a bookstore in the airport, and there was a Penguin Classic with a picture of a cow on the cover. And I'm like, what is this book? And I read the back, and I think the description said something like, this is one of the funniest books of all time. I'm like, okay, I'll read it. And that was Cold Comfort Farm. And I read it, and it was like another like Pride and Prejudice moment, like, I love this book. And a big chunk of my older book collection is actually first edition Stella Gibbons books because until Vintage reissued all of these, and I think that happened within the last decade, the only way you could read Stella Gibbons is if you were lucky enough to have a library that had these older first editions or you tracked them down yourself. But um, I've one Christmas, my husband gave me the whole big stack of the Stella Gibbons vintage ones. I think I have most of them.
That's
Conference at
pretty cool that he gives you all these gifts. Does he also have a background in English or anything?
He's actually really thrilled I'm doing this because I usually, like, babble at him about books all the time, and he's just like, "That's nice. Yeah, that's good." You know, he's into airplanes, World War II, and skiing.
Oh wow. Okay.
So, but yeah, it's all about enjoying spending time together, but he's very good and patient about listening to my book babbling. You and I were talking about it before that I've always found, like, being into books to be kind of a lonely thing because
Mm.
you're reading a book, maybe you're in a book club, but, um, he's very good about just letting me word word at him, like, "Oh, this book is so good," and blah, 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 but yeah, I got, those. The funny thing is with Stella Gibbons, the conference at Cold Comfort Farm has a random like, I don't know how she came across this, but it actually references his hometown, which is a very, very small town in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I don't there is, as far as I can tell, no other place in the world that has the same name, and it pops up in that book. So I thought that was wonderful.
Do you have
So
any thoughts on the importance of being earnest? Because I always sort of recommend that as the first thing people should check out in Oscar Wilde's oeuvre.
yeah, that's actually my second copy of that book. My first one was sort of loved to death, so I just got that one, I think, within the last month. I love it. That's another great recommendation of what to read after Austen.
Mm.
Uh, I love The Importance of Being Earnest because I think every line is funny.
Yeah.
It's just a constant joke. I also really, really love, what's the other one? An Ideal Husband. That one's a bit more serious, but it's also very funny. Uh, I I just bought a palm tree from IKEA and I stuck a little sign in it that said, "Yes, the usual palm," and my husband's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "It's from An Ideal Husband. It's Oscar Wilde. How do you not know that?" He's just like, "Okay, okay." But, Oscar Wilde is wonderful. I think most people who've read Wilde have just read Dorian Gray, but that is it really Oscar Wilde if you haven't read The Importance of Being Earnest? Because it's just a bon mot after bon mot after bon mot. And you know what, though?
Yep.
Speaking of, like, the importance of editions, I so this one is not the one I love to death. My Barnes& and Noble copy, classics copy that I bought went forever ago. That one, the cover was splitting because I read it so many times. Oh, there it is. Um, that one, the citations or the footnotes in it were so helpful. They they explain some of the jokes like, "Oh, hey, you might, understand that this was a joke right here." I think particular one that stands out for me is one of the footnotes explains that between, Algy and his butler when they're kind of talking about the cucumber sandwiches that, like, the butler sort of insults Algy, and that's why he dismisses him right away, and that's not something I would have picked up on without the footnote. So, again, like, if you're going to learn about books, it's important to buy an edition that's going to teach you something, because you might understand all the words, but you might not understand the context if somebody's not saying, "Hey, this is what's happening here." So, yeah, love Oscar Wilde. His
And
fairy
Don
tales.
Quixote seems sort of I wasn't so familiar with the Anne of Green Gables series, and so I was doing a little bit of research with AI, and one of the interesting things that came up is the parallel with Don Quixote. So I was curious if you thought about that, and even just sort of the satirical angle of even Jane Austen.
Oh, no, I hadn't, like, made a connection between those 3 yet. This is a confession of a book collector. Don Quixote is one of the few books on my shelves I haven't read yet. Um When I was younger, in my late teens and early 20s, whenever I had a little bit extra money, I'd go to Barnes& and Noble, and I think I would read the back of every single one of their classics. Um like, every time I would go and they had a particular shelf that they put all of these sort of classics on, and I'd pick up all of them, and I'd read the back, and I would buy the one yeah, every trip that sounded interesting to me, and Don Quixote is on my to-be-read list, and I think it's been on my to-be-read list for getting close to 20 years, but I will get to that one eventually.
So let me jump back to
Sure.
is there anything else you want to just say about Gibbons?
Not not really,
Okay.
I think there's, um a lot of space for people to get more interested in her writing. I think she's kind of unfairly overlooked too a bit. I mean, most people haven't read her beyond Cold Comfort Farm, which is a pity. Okay. So here, um, love Agatha Christie, and I love these editions of her in particular. They are so bright, and the cover art is fun, and I just think they look good. Poor Miss Marple there has kind of been read to death. You can see her spine's going, but the Agatha Christie's look great. I think we kinda skipped I jumped right into those. We've got oh, we can go to the beginning. So here are D.E. Stevenson's books. I got into that, I think, on a Reddit recommendation because, that's another what do you read after Austen. Miss Bunkle's book is great. It's hilarious. I was reading it, and I don't read a lot of modern stuff, and I don't know why, but I thought that was, like, a modern book, and I'm reading it, I'm, like, saying to my husband, like, "This is really good." wow, like I didn't know people wrote like this these days. Like this is a great book. And then I looked at it, it was like published in like 1930. I'm like, oh, I was kind of off on that one by like 100 years. Miss Bunkle's book is really great. It was the first book in a 4-book series. I have the first 3 there. Celia's House is interesting because it was, for the time, a modern take on Jane Austen's Mansfield Park, and it's very, very yeah, it's very overt. It has a lot of like it's basically a fan fiction of that book. Like it's clearly a parallel, and it's really good, and I think a lot of people would enjoy that. And then Listening Valley is just it's a really sweet, kind of interesting, kind of sad romance novel. I've read quite a bit of D.E. Stevenson beyond these, is that 5 books? Some of her writing is a bit more hit and miss, but, these 5 are excellent, which I think why Source Books has reissued them. They haven't reissued all of her books, but just kind of a selection have been reissued within the, like, last decade. But they're all really great. C.S. Lewis's, Space Trilogy. I don't know if this is an urban legend or not, but at some point I read or heard that Tolkien and Lewis, who were friends, like had a challenge that Lewis was going to set out and write a science fiction trilogy, and Tolkien was going to set out and write a fantasy trilogy. And Tolkien's fantasy trilogy was obviously Lord of the Rings, and C.S. Lewis's sci-fi trilogy is the Space Trilogy, and they are also excellent books. And that Hideous Strength was hard to read. I don't know if you've ever read it. That is a hard book to read. It is so interesting, and it has so much about, like, being how people can get manipulated by the media and, like, secret cabals, and it freaks you out really bad, but it's a great book. It's awesome. And Paralandra, that's a hard book to read because at one point a character falls into a cave and he doesn't know how to get out, and I'm terrified of caves, so that's a rough read, but very well worth it. Got a couple of Hammets in there. The Thin Man is pretty much my favorite movie, so I had to get the book. The I think it's one of those rare occasions where the movie is something I like better than the book.
Mm.
It's the book's a bit more hard-boiled, the movie is very funny and wonderful, but is a great read. Maltese Falcon is a great read. And then here we are back at the Agatha Christie's, which, um, I love these editions. The colors are so bright. They're great to look at. I don't think they have much value in and of themselves, as most of my books don't, but again, great to look at. Love they're, like, nice to read. They have just the right heft, and the covers have that, like, have a really nice feeling to them. They're really nice productions, so
Is there one in particular you recommend people get started with?
well, if you're gonna read Miss Marple is best in the short stories. So that's her short story collection, and those are extremely good. Um, let's see. Five Little Pigs is probably my favorite one, though the clues are excellent. It was also published under the title Murder in Retrospect, I think, because, the detective has to I know it's Poirot. I can't speak French. I don't know how to say it properly. I can't. Poirot? He is challenged to solve a murder that had happened like 10 or 15 years ago. And he does it by interviewing all the people who are around. And at the end, he reveals what happens from those interviews. And the clues fit perfectly. And it's one of those where you don't realize they're there. And then when you find out, it's like, what? And that happens, I think, with any good mystery, but I think the cluing in that one is particularly excellent. So, if you're going to jump into Agatha Christie, my recommendations would be Five Little Pigs and the Complete Miss Marple short stories. They are all but, for the most part, until you get into, like, late stage Christie where she kind of fell off a lot, and then I think there were maybe 4 or 5 books she published in the '30s when she wanted to get out of her publishing contract and was just putting out whatever. Outside of, like, those books, everything she wrote was great. Like, she's the queen of mystery for a reason. I think the back of the books all say she's only ever been outsold by the Bible, and I mean,
Wow.
there's a reason for that.
How did
She's
you get into mystery?
How did I get into mystery? Through the Babysitters Club mystery books,
Hmm.
honestly. But then I think I bought a copy of The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes when I was in my early teens, and I that was another, "Oh, these are so good." And yeah, I think and then I got more Sherlock Holmes. I think my second copy of Sherlock Holmes, I read so much that the book split in half, so sorry to that book. It is now split in half, but so that was kind of the adventure with mystery. But I think I really love the golden age mysteries, so, like, Christie and Sayers and, you know, quite a few I've quite dabbled in quite a few others, but, the queen of mystery is the queen of mystery for a reason.
Mm.
So here we've got The Great Gatsby, which I would say is the most beautifully written book of all time.
Well,
I for a while, I lived a couple blocks away from the F. Scott Fitzgerald house. So, like, I had to have my F. Scott Fitzgerald moment and read through most of his things, but I don't think many people can touch him for, like, the sheer beauty of his prose. Like, it was one of those books where you're in English class in high school and the teacher's talking to you about all the symbolism, and most time you're like about the teacher and the symbolism, but for that, you're like, "Oh, no, he 100% wrote that into that book, like, that's not my teacher just going off on a tangent, that's, like, for real there." So, Poldark book, that was a gift from my sister-in-law, thanks, Steph. That was a good read. I ended up reading about half the series, so that was a good one. The Forsyte Saga! The Forsyte Saga is another overlooked gem of literature. Galsworthy won the Nobel Prize for Literature, like, he is a big deal. He could write, and that is just like, every sentence of the Forsyte Saga is one you wanna underline. It's so good. It's so good. It's an incredible book. More
just go back
people
to Gatsby for a second. Do you have any thoughts on the movie, the recent movie adaptation?
I didn't see it.
Oh, okay.
I like the memes that came out of it, though. So,
Did you
uh
want to? Was that intentional? You wanted to sort of preserve the book
Mhm.
in your memory,
What do you mean
or you
preserve?
just
Oh,
don't
well,
generally don't watch movie
generally don't
adaptations?
watch movies. I don't really have the time for it.
Yeah.
Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Society is actually really excellent. That one I did see the movie of. The movie is not as good. I thought the movie would be as good, but it wasn't. The book's way better. James Harriet, they are not in the order they were published. They're in color order. So sorry to everybody who cares about that. Those are great books, though. Have you ever read those?
I haven't.
Oh man. So it's a memoir, a fictionalized memoir, and about a rural vet in, like, the 1940s, and you're like, "I don't care about a rural vet in the 1940s," like, "I don't care, I didn't," and suddenly you're up till 4 in the morning reading about this vet birthing a calf, and you're like, "Why am I up till 4 in the morning reading this book?" But it's so good, he's so funny, and the way he writes is, like, every chapter, it it's all a story, but each chapter kind of works as a standalone story, so they're almost like short stories within a novel. They're excellent. They're so good. They're so wonderful and so funny. And again, you'll be up to like 4 in the morning. Why am I reading this? I don't care about sheep, but it's good stuff. And then I think the Georgette Hare book is there just for color. I have a whole shelf of her, so we can talk about her later. Return of the Thin Man is the sequel to The Thin Man. That is one of the annotated Mansfield Parks. That's the shepherd. David Shepard? Shepherd? He they are not my favorite. When I read through that entire series, I only picked this one up because I got a great deal on it. I think it was like $5 new, so I'm not gonna turn that down. But there were a couple mistakes in his annotations, I thought, and I was a little like, "Mm," but I read them all. Um, I didn't take any pictures of this. They're mostly in bin books, but I have a few books about grammar and writing, and the Woe Is I is one I actually just recently picked up. I haven't read that one yet. I'm pretty excited for it. Then we have Howard's End, which is a great book with a great adaptation. Emma Thompson's always excellent. Austen fans love Emma Thompson. Um, oh, Sherlock Holmes, Arthur Conan Doyle. So here are two of Arthur Conan Doyle's less well-known books, The Complete Brigadier Gerard and The White Company and Sir Nigel, which is like, it's almost kind of probably equivalent to like Ivanhoe. It's a medieval romance adventure novel, but these are great books. Brigadier Gerard is hilarious. It's about, for people who like Agatha Christie, imagine Poirot's sidekick Hastings being in Napoleon era military and thinking he's very smart and knows everything that's going on, and everybody around him thinks he's a complete nincompoop because he is. And that's kind of the vibe of that book, but they're great. Conan Doyle, I think I can see why he killed Holmes off temporarily, because he could write such other he could write other genres so well. I mean, The Lost World is great too, and the Professor Challenger stories, and nobody paid attention to them, and people still don't pay attention to them. So I get why he did it. It was a poor choice, and he obviously went back on that choice, but anyway. And we have Tristram Shandy, very famous satire. A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, very famous American coming of age novel. Oh, then we have to me, a very special copy of Anne of Green Gables. You're like, why is this one special? So when I was at the University of Minnesota, I weaseled my way into a course taught by Jack Zipes. And I weaseled my way into it. It was I don't remember, they had a special term for it, like a cross-sectional course, but basically it was being offered through 3 different departments at the same time, and one of the departments it was being offered in, it was like English, German, and, I think film studies, and the English section was filled, so I registered for it through the German section, but I don't speak a lick of German, but they said I could do it anyway, and, like, the first day, Jack Zipes is like, "So those of you who are registered in this class through the German department will have to write 1 paper in German." I was like, "I do not speak a word of German, but I don't wanna leave. Can I please stay?" And he let me stay. It was a class on fairy tales. Jack Zipes is, like, one of the world's, like, leading authorities on fairy tales, and I really wanted to take it. All of this is to say, a year later, I was getting my mail at my college apartment, and I had a package, and I opened it up, and it was this copy of Anne of Green Gables, which Jack Zipes wrote the introduction for, and he signed it with just the, "I heard you're a fan. Best regards, Jack Zipes." So I think that's really neat. It's probably the only autographed book I have, so I'm pretty proud of it, and I thought it was awesome that he put that together. He put that together, I'll get to that later, because I won a book collection award at the University of Minnesota for my Lucy Maud Montgomery collection, so he must have seen that and sent me the book, but I thought that was great.
Well,
We got some Dickens. Speaking of fairy tales, we have Snow White and Rose Red by Patricia C. Reed, who is mostly famous in the book world for her Enchanted Forest Chronicles. But this is a really good book that she incorporates fairy tale and actual like English history into, like real people out of history. And it's a really good read. I think more people should read it. Then I've got a copy of The Hobbit. It's the movie tie-in one, and the movie was, so that's a bit unfortunate, but I have another much prettier copy, and I think that's about the end of that shelf.
so I was wondering why was Zipes' expertise particularly relevant to this Anne of Green Gables?
I don't know. That that is an enduring mystery to me. I don't know. Um, but he wrote a great intro. I enjoyed the intro. I enjoy having the signed copy. Yeah, I'm not sure. I guess
And
I
I think the term you might have been thinking was cross-registration earlier.
could been. Yes,
Okay.
cross-registration. Yes.
Riverside Shakespeare.
Yes, I got that
Library
at a
sale.
library sale for, like, $3. I was super excited. I'm like, "This is all of Shakespeare for $3." So we got the Riverside Shakespeare. That's awesome. I got no this is just the brown shelf. So the original Sherlock Holmes with illustrations, sort of Shannara, knockoff Tolkien. Sorry, Terry Brooks fans, but it is. Then we've got every English major has Norton Anthologies. They just make us buy them. And when you think of how much you pay for college textbooks, I'm like, I will not get rid of this. It's like one of the most expensive books I own. So there's some Nortons. The next is more Doyle, less not more Doyle beyond Sherlock Holmes. Then Where the Sidewalk Ends, just great poems. Oh my gosh. Shel Silverstein is the best. They're funny. The illustrations are fantastic. That's a book I've kind of loved to pieces. I think the cover is actually falling off of that. Then tucked in there is an interesting one, A Girl of the Limberlost. Um, Early American literature. So Lucy Maud Montgomery, Jean Stratton-Porter should have become to America what Lucy Maud Montgomery became to Canada. This is an early, like, teenage-focused romance novel, but it takes place in Indiana. And part of it actually takes place on Mackinac Island in Michigan, and it's so fun to read that part because a lot of the places they reference on Mackinac Island are still tourist attractions there. Like, you can go see the Devil's Kitchen, and the characters go to the Devil's Kitchen while they're there. It's a really good book, very, um, great. Part of it takes place in Chicago too. Like, there aren't for me, I read a lot of, English books, like books that take place in England specifically. So it was really awesome when I stumbled upon this, which was again another what do you read after Austen book that took place in like the Midwest. Hey. And that I think is a first edition. It's beautiful, I think, even though it's brown. It's a pretty book.
My dad is from Chicago, and you said the way you say Chicago sounds like you're from Chicago or somewhere around there.
Wisconsin. Not currently in Wisconsin, but originally from Wisconsin. Then the next 3 books, they're called the Seasons editions. They did a limited press run of 10,000, which isn't, like, really limited. I don't think they have any intrinsic value. They're pretty, I can't 1 second. They have these die-cut covers, which are kind of pretty to look at. I got these very cheaply, like, I think less than $10 each, and, $10 for a brand new paper book's a good thing, but yes, they're stamped with the number, but again, they're never gonna be worth anything. They're just kinda something you buy because they're pretty, and this is the cover of The Girl of the Limberlost. So, it takes place in a swamp, primarily. I'm assuming this is a swamp plant. So yeah, those 3 books they're not anything special, just kinda something you buy because 'cause they're pretty. Um Then there's my copy of The Lord of the Rings. I think I have the paperbacks too, but I wanted to get a good edition, and I did quite a bit of research, and that was the one that people recommended because of the illustrations. So, then just another Barnes& and Noble edition of collected collected Dickens. I like Collins better than Dickens. They were contemporaries, but yeah, Dickens is fine. You gotta read some Dickens in your life, right? Okay. Oh, this is like my miscellaneous shelf. Um, we have stuff
Dickens also sort of was paid by the word, right? So
I think when I was in high school, we had to read Great Expectations, and I think I did a word count and found a sentence that had something like 170 words in it. I'm like, "How is this one sentence?" It was a bit much. Okay, so at the end, we have a really fun edition of Three Men in a Boat. I think it's from the '70s. It's illustrated. I'll go pop over, bring some of these over. Um, so it comes with slipcovers. Isn't that fun? Isn't that bright? 3 Men in a Boat is very funny if you've never read it. It's just like absurdity, but it's got these like great illustrations in it.
Well,
I got a great deal off of this. I think it was like $20 on eBay. It's probably worth like $30, so yay for inflation. I made some money, but it's got great illustrations. It's just a beautiful edition. And again, I love the colors. I love bright things. I'm very tacky. So that was that. Let's see what else do I have on that shelf. Then The Stone Fae, which is an interesting book by Robin McKinley, who is my favorite fantasy author. Love her so much. That's an interesting one. It's kind of like a kid's book, but it's not, and it's illustrated kind of in a weird space. Then I have the Annotated Anne of Green Gables by Oxford, which I'm very happy to have because, again, I love books that teach me about the books I love. It's a great thing to have.
do you
V
read those cover to cover, or do you kind of
I
jump
do.
around?
I do. Um,
Well,
yeah. And then Vita Sackville West, A Note of Explanation. That was a gift, and that was a really fun book. Um, Speaking of Chicago, Within the Fairy Castle, that is a book that was made by the Museum of Science and Industry about the Colleen Moore's fairy tale castle that's in the museum and how she came across the pieces for it and kind of her background. That is a fun book to have. I love the fairy tale castle. I could sit and stare at that for hours. It's gorgeous. Then my next two books are by my favorite artist, Charlie Harper. The Golden Pleasure Book of Biology is actually a very old golden book. This is one of my rarer books, so it's interesting, but basically they hired Charlie Harper to illustrate a biology book for children, and like they're gorgeous. They're gorgeous illustrations. I love them. Like and this is a rarer book. I mean, you can still buy it. There are copies available on the internet, but just the way the animals are, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful book. I was so pleased to get that one. And The Beguiled by the Wild is another book of his art, but that is currently in print, and anybody could buy that if they wanted to. Then we've got a biography of Lucy Maud Montgomery, just a biography.
would you say that's the best one?
Her autobiography would probably be the best choice if you wanted to learn more about her.
Ugh.
I can't remember the title. And I think it's in my downstairs instead of up here. But yeah, her autobiography would probably be the best one. I've got 3 books that were put out by TCM about like golden era stars or silver screen stars. They're fine. They're interesting. They're interesting books. The next is a Jane Austen year, which I think was put out by the Jane Austen House a couple years ago to celebrate Jane Austen's 250th birthday. And it's kind of fun. Like it has a few selections in it pertaining to every month, like just something to reflect on, like bits from her letters, bits of her novels. So I kind of split that up and been reading a chapter a month since I bought it. Next is Emma Thompson's Sense and Sensibility screenplay and diaries, which if anybody loves Emma Thompson or Sense and Sensibility, that is a fabulous book. Emma Thompson in and of herself is a fantastic author. She wrote that screenplay, and her diaries are hilarious. Like she's a very funny woman. There's an anecdote where she's in a hotel and she gets up in the morning and she walks out onto the balcony naked, and there's a couple on the balcony next to her, and she's like, and I turned around and walked back in. I don't know why she was naked. It's just stuck out in the story. It's pretty good. Um, the next 2 books are fun. What a Wonderful World and What a Wonderful Phrase. If you like language, the premise of them is to take like, there are words in other languages that is one word, but the definition is like a whole sentence. Like maybe the Finnish have a one word for like the feeling you get when you're sitting at home on the couch in your slippers. And that's kind of what those books are about. Too Long Didn't Read Shakespeare, because why not? It was fun. Speaking American's a great book. It's about different speech patterns in America. It's so much fun. Like, there's a chunk of Wisconsin where people say rummage sale instead of yard sale or garage sale, and it talks about different regionalisms in language. Then we've got a few Jane Austen coffee books. Jane Austen cover to cover is an awesome book for a collector because it is kind of the history of the covers of Jane Austen books. So if you're like big into covers, like I am, it gives you a whole history. Some of there's some very funny ones because they're quite awful. Like there were some issued in the early 2000s that were mimicking the Twilight books.
Oh no.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, like black with like bloody red roses. But it's a great book for that. And then we got
So I assume all the covers are shown in here, right?
yeah, it's kinda like a picture book, but with, like, captions of saying this edition was from such and such a time. And obviously for, like, the Twilight ones, the author pointed out that they were inspired by the Twilights. Probably a poor life choice on that part.
There's an edition of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations that has like a similar kind of cover, and it's just kind of funny to see how different the covers can be.
Right?
It sounds really interesting.
I've been thinking it'd be great if somebody made a compilation of, like, the worst AI generated covers for, like, ebooks right now, because like, you just hop on Amazon for something and you're, like, looking at a picture of a book that was written in the 1800s and, like, the cover is, like, way off base, but
I wonder
yeah.
if there's any like Fabio Jane Austen. Do you know?
I mean, like, I'm sure you could find an ebook with that sort of cover right now, but I don't think there are oh! Well, when we'll get to the Jane Austen shelf, I'll show you something special. We'll make you laugh. You'll see. It's not Fabio, but kinda in that vein. Oh, yeah, Hamilton: The Revolution, which is a fascinating book. It's kinda like the background of the making of Hamilton. If you're a
I was going
Hamilton,
to say because you mentioned presidential history earlier, and I noticed several Hamilton. So
yeah, that's the book about the musical. So,
mm.
then we got Penguin Book of Christmas Stories. Now we're getting into the red books and The Lost Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, which is like fan fiction. It's very good. There's another Robin McKinley, my favorite fantasy author. That was a great book. I'd like her to write some more books. And then I've got my Harry Potters because again, like most millennials, like went through the big Harry Potter phase and we were all doing the countdown of when's the next one coming out and you get the book the day it came out. So
And
yeah,
it doesn't have a dust jacket on it.
my parents threw them out,
Oh,
but I
this
had
looks
them.
like the original from when it was first published.
Yeah, my grandma's a big reader. Like, I come from a family of readers. My great-grandparents met because my great-grandma saw my great-grandpa walking past to her house every day to go to the library. So,
Wow.
like, we come from a family of readers. So that my grandma had heard about the Harry Potter books, and she brought over a stack of, like, the first 2, and that's how I got into those. I find they haven't held up from, like, an adult perspective.
Mm.
When I've reread them as an adult, I've been kinda like, "Some of this doesn't make a whole lot of sense." But when you're a kid or a teenager reading it, you're like, "These are great." From my adult perspective, I'm a little bit like, but they look great on the shelf, nice bright colors. So
And you've got the rest of them sort of mixed in by color.
mhm. Yeah, they're kind of everywhere. Like I said, they look great.
What about the illustrated letters?
So that's Jane Austen let a selection of Jane Austen's letters with illustrations. Jane Austen's letters are super interesting because they are a lot darker. Um, like, a lot darker than you would expect, like, real sassy, like, making comments about, I think, like, some woman died because she saw her must have seen her husband's face in good lighting or something, like, for the first time, like, a lot of dark jokes, but, they're definitely worth reading. Again, if you're, like, through her novels, you need something else to read Jane Austen's letters. Her sister, like, famously burnt most of her letters, so not all of them survived, but enough to make a book out of them. So that was the first shelf. Oh, now we're getting into the Jane Austen. So I'm
Maybe
gonna
you could talk about this first,
oh,
or
my Funko Pop. I'm really like my brother got that one for me. It's a very rare Funko Pop, very coveted because it's Jane Austen, and like Jane Austen nuts, we're crazy.
Do you know what book she's holding?
I think it's Pride and Prejudice. Yes, it's Pride and Prejudice. So I'm gonna grab just a few of those down, or half the shelf. So up on that shelf, I had wanted to get myself a very cohesive set of Austen because I had been buying random copies here and there. So I decided I was going to get the Everyman Library ones. They had the best. They have hardcovers, great print size, great paper, great like quality introductions. And I was ordering. I buy a lot of books used online because I'm cheap, and I had ordered Persuasion, and they sent me the movie tie-in one. I'm like, oh, that doesn't match the rest of them. That was a bummer. It's got a green spine, the rest of black. But then I had to get the Sense and Sensibility tie-in one so they can like hang out together. But I promised you a treat when we got into the Jane Austen one. It's not Fabio, but if you can see where they put complete and unabridged, I think is very cheeky. And that's why I had to buy that. And also, like, okay, this book, the main character is 17, and the young man is supposed to be very handsome and like 25, and I do not know what the artist was thinking with that one. It's pretty bad. Speaking of pretty bad, Tor, which is famous for like mass market sci-fi and fantasy, did 3 Jane Austen books, and the cover art is quite horrible, and the cover blurbs are even worse, and they are so fun. So I've got them.
Could
Like
you hold
so,
up each one individually so we can just, because, yeah.
so here's the Sense and Sensibility one. Um, Here is Persuasion. Like, look at this lady biting her knuckles in the background. Like, nobody even knows who that's supposed to be, and like, why is she biting her knuckles? And then Pride and Prejudice, where I think Elizabeth Bennet looks like about 45. But like the background is what's a girl to do? Scatterbrains, social climbing. Mrs. Bennet makes one demand of her 5 daughters: marry, marry well, marry rich. Like, what? So I bought those because they're fun. This is a special copy for me because it was my first Jane Austen book that I owned. I ended up buying like a complete set where they were all together, but this is the first one I owned. I got sunscreen on it when I was like 14 and ruined it a bit. But so that one's special for me because of that. But um yes, that is the fun of the Jane Austen shelf. I I love buying fun covers. So, um, anything else in there? There's one Chiltern classic. That's the Northanger Abbey with the purple spine. I own, I think, 2 Chiltern. I think they're Chiltern classics, but I don't like them. They're very dark, and the paper is super glossy on the inside, and it's just they're not. I don't think they're pleasant to read. Um, that there's a blue and green book kind of on the other side of the Funko Pop, and she is reading Pride and Prejudice. I don't remember if I confirmed that. The Jane Austen, A Very Short Introduction. We were at a little bookstore in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I think we were at Literati in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I'm gonna pop that out there. I think they had a whole rack of these very short introduction books, and they are fantastic. So if you want to read about one of your favorite authors, like, get your hands on one of those because they're fabulous for, like, learning about, like, classic literature and authors. Vintage classics, that one, that I think was a miss for an edition. I didn't like the introduction. I love the old look of the orange penguin classics. That one's a reissue. It's not actually a vintage one, but I think they didn't sell it in America. I'm pretty sure I had to import it from from another country because they didn't reissue it here, but I'm glad I did because I love the look of it. Lost in Austen is a create your own Jane Austen adventure. It's just a silly book. Jane Austen at Home is a really excellent look into Jane Austen's life, particularly to her home life. Jane Austen's The History of England is something she wrote when she was a teenager. It's very funny, very sassy, and her sister illustrated it a little bit. And then the last one is a manga of Pride and Prejudice, and that was a gift. So
I don't know if you could show us the inside of that at all, but I'm
Sure.
kind of curious what that looks like.
Oh, just go figure that these very short introductions were put out by Oxford. Oxford like crushes it with the things. Well, this is chapter 11. This is a true manga. I'm pretty sure you read it from back to front. Yes, you do. So chapter 1 is at the end of the book because that is how mangas are published. It's just a fun little thing. I think I got this as a gift from my brother too. I'm very fortunate in that people in my family who I love like get into my love of books. So
Can you show the back of the cover? Or
sure,
actually, let's look at the front and the back because
sure.
they both have more art on.
Here's the front. This is put out by Udon and Morpheus. I think this is my only Morpheus book in my collection. So that is it. The Jane Austen manga. So I have when I took that Oxford class, I used it as an excuse to buy up just a ton of Austen scholarship, but that's all on a shelf in the basement for the most part. Hey, this shelf in my mind I call my pretty shelf because I think it looks pretty. At the end we have a Austen copy of Emma. That's another one of those seasoned editions with the die cut covers. Then is another golden era author, Marjorie Allenham, and Crime and Mr. Campion is one of her detective novels. Next is Anne of Green Gables that my in-laws got me from Prince Edward Island, which is where the Anne of Green Gables stories take place. They took a trip out there. And then just a little comic book. That's really sweet. So The Blythes Are Quoted is a really interesting story for Montgomery fans. So I thought I had the complete Lucy Maud Montgomery, like all of her published books, but there is a scholar in England, in Canada, I think Benjamin Lefebvre, I can't speak French, who has been reissuing collections of her short stories that haven't been previously published in book form. And The Blythes Are Quoted, which was published originally under the title The Road to Yesterday, but it was published after she died and many changes were made to the manuscript. And The Blythes Are Quoted is the original version of the story she had dropped off at her publishers before she died. So that one's why it's interesting, though I have to admit to being a little annoyed because it's kind of annoying when you think you have a full collection and then you have to keep your eye out and buy more to finish it off. Then I have The Sunny Side by A. Milne, who is mostly famous for Winnie the Pooh, but he wrote really good stuff. I got that book at a Borders clearance sale when Borders was closing, which was very sad. But that's a great book of short stories, and again, Milne was a great writer outside of Winnie the Pooh. Then are just some the Puffin and Bloom editions of Anne of Green Gables and the Austen books. They're just pretty. They aren't anything special in and of themselves. They're just pretty to look at. They're pretty covers. Um, Next is Love and Friendship, which is Jane Austen's early writings. That was put out by Penguin. The Penguin books, cloth bound. They're the Penguin cloth bound books. They're kind of controversial in book collecting circles because they look gorgeous. They're beautiful. But if you actually read them, the covers are very famous for that art kind of rubbing off. So they look great when you buy them and they look great on a shelf, but you can't actually handle them very much because then their beauty fades.
To what extent do you reread Austen?
I think like once a year at least.
Wow.
So yeah, it's always worth rereading, right? Just like people rewatch favorite movies. I think she's always worth reading. Then there's Shakespeare's Star Wars, and the next book I'm gonna pull down to show you. This one is special. So I was talking before about Emily Eden and her two novels, The Semi-Attached Couple and The Semi-Detached House. And I loved a Semi-Attached Couple and The Semi-Detached House. I love them so much. I bought this one because it's beautiful. I think this is an old library edition. So it's got like the plastic on it. Um, this has an introduction by the Right Honorable Anthony Eden, who was an English prime minister and like the great great nephew of Emily Eden. Though I am under the impression that he was not a very popular prime minister, but I think it's super neat that he wrote this introduction. And I just love the cover art on this. It's very like 1940s or 50s. So I think this is a really great edition. And it used to belong to the Metcalf Library. So thank you, Metcalf Library, for not having it anymore so I can have it. It was left by George Putnam Metcalf and Margaret Carter Metcalf. So thank you to them, my copy of this book. Yeah. And then Novel Destinations. That's just an interesting book about places that get mentioned in novels. Stella Gibbons, that's one of the books I had to track down before Vintage reissued all of her books. Jane Austen, A Family Record, is just another Austen biography. And then my pretty copy of The Hobbit. That is an illustrated one. It's very nice. It's a great edition to have. In print, nothing special of itself. Very readily available. Okay, next up is just Georgette Hare novels. She was a romance, like one of the original historical romance novelists. Most of her novels, at least all of the ones I have, are set in the Regency era. She's a very funny author, great author, like not like highbrow literature, but I call her my bubblegum author. Like when I just need like a palate cleanser, you just want to read something that's going to make you smile, make you laugh. That's when I turn to these books. They're funny. I think she makes a point of like ending every single one of her novels with just like a random one-off joke, which I respect. I like that. She's a little bit controversial. Um, there's definitely like some anti-Semitism and like some light racism in a few of her books, so I don't typically recommend them widely, but if if you avoid one with that, they're just like bubblegum reading. So that is that said. And the next shelf is a big mixed bag. Painted classic. The first one is a Sherlock Holmes book. Painted classics are put out by Harper Muse. They just have very pretty covers and they're actually textured. Like the painting is sort of textured, so they're kind of fun to own. Agnes Grey by Anne Bronte, the underrated but also best Bronte, I think. That's a really great novel. Federalist Papers, I got a really good deal on it. Felt like it was a good thing to have. Makes your bookshelf serious and self-respecting if you can put the Federalist Papers on it. Then we have Hercule Poirot by Agatha Christie. That's the complete short stories. That's a great one to have. Anatomy of a Murder, which was made into a very famous movie. The courthouse. I've been to the courthouse where the movie was filmed. Next to it is a very slim orange book. And that if you zoom out, there is a bright green book, I think towards the end. Yeah, like the history of the Hayward Lakes. The orange book and the green book were both written. They're actually rare books. I think I got them from Shaquamanon Books in Washburn, Wisconsin. Great used bookstore. They are the history of the Hayward Lakes region in Wisconsin, which is a place that's very near and dear to my heart. And they're this man, Eldon something or another. I can't remember his name.
Marple.
Yeah, he was a kind of a historian who just Eldon Marple was a historian of that era, and he put these books together, and they're really interesting, and I'm super glad to own them, which sounds like a weird thing, but again, that's a very special place to me. I don't think if it was a special place to you that those books would be particularly interesting. Then we got a copy of Emma. Penguin has been putting out special editions in honor of I think the 250th birthday and that's one of those. It had a great intro. I think that I collect intros. Next is Gentlemen Prefer Blondes by Anita Loos, which I think was the number 2 best-selling book of 1922 or something like that. It blows my mind somehow that a lot of books that were bestsellers, and they're great books, have just fallen off. I tracked this book down for a really long time. I think it was out of print. It was very hard to come by. I think I put in a library request twice and it got denied, like, they wouldn't even lend out their copy. So when I finally found one I could own, it was great, and it's very funny. It's a great book. It's so it's a satire of a flapper just kinda taking men by storm, and it's fabulous. And I mean, obviously, it inspired the musical, which became a Marilyn Monroe movie, and the Marilyn Monroe movie is very famous, but the book is excellent. I read a lot of webtoons, so got some webtoons Unscrolled and Cursed Princess Club. Then As If: The Oral History of Clueless. A lot of Austen fans are going to be big Clueless fans because Clueless is based on Austen's Emma, and that book actually has a whole section about the connections between Austen's Emma and the movie, so that's really great. We got another Norton, 'cause again, they pop up when you're an English major, you got the Nortons. More Cursed Princess Club. Look good on a shelf. The
Can you
next
just say a little bit about what Webtoon is?
Webtoon, it's a Korean-based company that publishes, basically comics online. They have 2 tiers. They have people who self-publish comics, and then they have, like, paid comics, and a lot of them were originally published in Korean and are in translation. And it's kinda like for me, it's like the hair thing where you just want some light reading.
Mm.
They have a lot of different genres. The best webtoon ever is The Greatest Estate Developer. Highly recommend. It is fantastic. Um, yeah, it's
Are we
just
gonna see that later? I don't remember seeing that one.
no, it's not in print in English, and I don't read Korean, so I'm not gonna buy maybe I would just for the artwork eventually buy the Korean edition, but they have not put out the English translation yet. Next is the Penguin Threads edition of Emma. It's, that one's worth looking at, it's really pretty. Uh, This is a gorgeous cover. It is a somebody stitched this, and it's not stitched here, but they texturized this, so it has this incredible hand feel to it, and it's beautiful, and it has the, like, cut pages, which I love that texture. Like, book people just love that texture, right? So this is probably my favorite copy of Emma. I love the cover. I love the texture.
Could you hold it up close to kind of show, yeah, the face, the hair?
Mhm.
Wow. And so that's a series of books that are all like that,
I
Penguin
think
Threads.
so, but I think they only did a few of them. Oh, yeah, they did The Secret Garden, Emma, and Black Beauty, and that was it, but I only have Emma. Next is another painted classics, that's Persuasion, just has a pretty cover. Next is Twice Upon a Time, that's one of the ones I was talking about where previously unpublished Lucy Montgomery short stories have been gathered. Next is Wuthering Heights. I think I had to buy that for school. That's a scholarly edition. Bedford St. Martin's is Macmillan's, like, college scholarship imprint.
Hmm.
Mm,
With these
next
painted ones, they don't have paintings inside, it's just the cover's different?
it's just the covers.
Okay.
They're pretty. And
Yeah,
and they
it's
I
great.
got them cheap, otherwise I wouldn't have gotten them. Next is the Cold Comfort Farm Folio Society edition. I think they originally put this out in the '70s and have just kind of always when I
Let me,
re
switch over, so
sorry.
yep.
Yeah, so, this is, Cold Comfort Farm by Folio Society. This has just fantastic illustrations. I think they're kinda like Roald Dahl-like.
Yeah, wow.
They're really great. Um, I I am sometimes a little leery about buying illustrated editions because sometimes the illustrations are ugly or they don't match, like, your mental picture. And obviously, these do not match my mental picture because Cold Comfort Farm's about real people and these are very cartoony, but they're just so much fun. They're so much fun. I think they match the vibes of the story itself. So I don't have a lot of folio societies, but I think that one was very, very well worth having. And then there's Anne of Green Gables. That's another children one. They're not my favorite. Um, more webtoons, and then more webtoons, and then another Puffin and Bloom edition, just because they're pretty, and why not? It doesn't sound very impressive to be like, I bought this book because it's pretty, but I mean, I buy books because they're pretty. They're home decor. It's better to buy a pretty book than to buy some random thing from made in China, right? I suppose most of these books probably are printed in China. Oh, okay. So over here we have my favorite annotated set of Austen, which are the Harvard University Press editions. Every Jane Austen fan who owns these would like to know why Persuasion has an ear on it and doesn't match the other ones. We are all very curious about that ear. But they are great. They're beautiful. They're hefty. They're thick and hefty, and the annotations are superb, and they look good on a shelf. They're fantastic. They're fantastic books to own.
I was gonna say, earlier looked at the illustrated letters,
Mhm.
and I remember in this Pride and Prejudice edition of the Belknap version, it has some letters in there. So, did you get a sense of, is the other one color or just black and white?
Oh, for the illustrated ones?
Yeah,
The
might
so
be
this
cool to show one of
the
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 Belknap ones.
illustrated one, this is kind of a coffee table book. It's the illustrations just kind of pull in from Regency era art. They're not actually illustrating the letters. It's more like
Oh,
Jane Austen's letters accompanied with artwork.
mm.
So this is the Harvard one. And I think, yeah, the Harvard, this is sort of similar in that it pulls in Regency era art, and there's a couple instances of examples of illustrations from other editions in it as well. So, yeah, those are great to have. They look great, they feel great, the information's great. They're fantastic editions. Um, that right there was my first Jane Austen one outside of that paperback. Like, you can see where it's cracked. I carried that around for, like, 15 years of my life. It went everywhere with me. I got it at Media Play, which is a store that does not exist, with a gift card I got for setting a school record for accelerated reader points.
How
So
does that work?
Accelerated Reader is a program, it still exists, where kids read a book and then they take a quiz on the book, and if they pass the quiz, they get a certain amount of points, and at least at my school, the teachers would assign a certain amount of points, that you needed to get done, like, you need to get, like, 20 points a semester or something like that, so I set the school record for over 1,000 points, and so the school librarians gave me a gift card to Media Play, and I bought that book, and I was like, it was great.
So 1,000 points. How many points could you get per book?
The highest point book was Anna Karenina, which again I read in middle school, and that was worth 80 points.
Wow. So you were really a bookworm.
Yeah, I had no friends.
That's one way to do it.
Right? Then you got Harry Potter. The next is The Great Fairy Tale Tradition, which is written by Jack Zipes, and that was our course literature for the fairy tale class. Chronicles of Narnia, just a really pretty edition. I think that is a Barnes& and Noble store one, but it's pretty. The Jane Austen Companion, that's just scholarship and essays about Austen. Mysterious Pair of Styles is another painted classics. Next year is Pride and Prejudice by Chronicle Books. They've put out a few editions of different classics. For Austen, I think they have Pride and Prejudice and Persuasion. And they're really fun coffee table books. Like, they've hired an artist to recreate letters that happen in the book. And so, like, the letters are included as inserts that you can take out and look at. So they're like multimedia productions. So they're really nice. And then I think that the end is a folio society of another personal favorite, Wives and Daughters by Elizabeth Gaskell. That's a wonderful book. That's great.
What do
So
you like about it?
it has a very similar vibe to Jane Austen. I think it takes place in the 1830s or 1850s. I don't quite remember. But it's just is she the subtitle is An Everyday Story, and it kind of is an everyday story, but the characters in it are so vibrant and so real. And Gaskell had that amazing talent where she could thread between the serious and the funny and like the witty and the touching, and like that book does that, where it just has that, where it touches on so many emotions and feelings, and there's so much wisdom in it. Like, there's one point where a character, he is just can't connect with his sons, and he's just miserable, and the way she describes it, like, how he's lashing out, and he's lashing out because he's miserable, and because he's miserable and he's lashing out, he's becoming more miserable, and the way she, like, describes, like, the psychology of that and the emotions of that is just, like, so right. And that's what something I just love reading, because, 1, it takes you out of yourself. It's the world's best drug, right? Like, it takes you out of yourself. You are struggling, there's a book for you somewhere. But I just love you reading about people, and I know they're fictional people for the most part, but, like, reading about people, and it helps you sort of digest your own experiences. And maybe it's the cliche, well, walk a mile in somebody else's shoes. Well, you're walking a mile in a character's shoes, and maybe that helps you understand other people in your life just that much more. So, as a very long rant, but I love Wives and Daughters. It's a great book. We got some more Just So Stories and The Jungle Book. Just So Stories is probably one of the greatest children's books ever written. They're fantastic stories. They're so funny. Um, like, Kipling gets referenced by other authors a lot, and you read Just So Stories, and then you kind of understand why. Like, oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, I also would, if I was an author in 1926, I also would be referencing Kipling. Like, I get it. So, Just So Stories is great. I just read The Hunchback of Notre Dame for book club. That's really interesting. Like, just thinking about symbolism and stuff, and wondering about what the authors are trying to get across to you. And Hugo's like, no, I'm going to make it very plain to you exactly what I want you to understand from this book. Excuse me while I add like 6 essays in the middle of the drama. And I thought I've never read a book like that, where the author's like, no, I'm writing this story about this point I'm trying to make, but I'm going to make it very, very, very clear for you that this is the point I want you to take away. And the whole idea of architecture being like the record of human existence before books and the printing press was one of like the most profound and interesting things. I like it kind of it just I sit and think about that a lot. It was such a great idea. Like, not great idea sound is not the right word. It is just so incredible to think about human existence like that, and architecture and building and form as the record of existence. That was great.
A lot of the most famous paintings, like The Last Supper, the original is on the wall of just on the interior of a church.
Mhm. And that's kind of his point, like, before the mass production of books, buildings told the story of humanity. And yeah. So that was good. We got some Agatha Christie. And then the Folio Society of the Complete Folio Society of Jane Austen. They've reissued this particular set is out of print. They are now on the gold editions. But I read a comment on Reddit where somebody's like, "Oh, nobody cares about the new editions Folio Society. Any Austen fan worth her salt's just gonna pull out her Haskells because the woodblock illustrations in these particular editions are very famous and very well known and fantastic." So that's a famous set for the illustrations. And then we have Persuasion. That's another one of the Chronicle books with like the pull-out letters that are just a fun thing to have. Folio Societies North and South, another Elizabeth Gaskell. And then Mina Lima's Beauty and the Beast. And that's a fun book. It's for kids. Like it has pages where things pop out and it's kind of an interactive book. And Belle's guarding her book because you can't have one Funko Pop just sitting by herself. Belle had to come join. Hi, Belle. And then a Folio Society Cranford, which is, I think, Elizabeth Gaskell's third most famous book. That one I got very, very cheap. It had a rough life before it came to me. And the next set is like their facsimiles of Jane Austen's Juvenilia. And so they're fun. I seem to not have them in book order. So yeah, it's like a reprint of Austen's actual manuscripts. So they're kind of fun. Um, then I have three more Austens. The one in the middle is the current Folio Society edition of Northanger Abbey, one of the gold ones. They used each Austen for the gold one has a different illustration, and I didn't like some of them, but the Northanger Abbey one, the illustrations are very pretty. The Sense and Sensibility and Emma are older ones. I think they're from the 60s. They're not Folio Society. I got those because they had introductions written by Stella Gibbons, one of my other favorite authors. So I thought they were worth tracking down to see what one of my favorite authors said about another one of my favorite authors. So that's where those came to be.
And so that concludes this
Number one.
bookcase here. And
we're on to shelf number 2.
Here's your second set of shelves. And we finally made it to the Ellen Montgomery section.
So this was my first book collection. And again, this is the collection that won the University of Minnesota Friends of the Library undergraduate book collection contest in 2007, 6, long time ago. I started collecting these when I was very young. And again, I'd go to Barnes and Noble and see what they had, and I would if they had a L.M. Montgomery book I didn't have, I bought it. And these have been with me for a long time. I don't think the collection itself has much value because I've read them all so much. Like half of them are falling apart. They are very beloved. The Anne of Windy Willows in the end stands out a bit. It doesn't match the Bantams. I think most of them are Bantams. Anne of Windy Willows was censored for American audiences and published as Anne of Windy Poplars. So a completist needs to have Anne of Windy Willows because it has the censored materials back in. And they actually changed the title because they thought Americans would confuse it with The Wind in the Willows. So they had to change it to Anne of Windy Poplars. So that is why that one particular one kind of stands out. But if you're a completionist, you have to have the original version. So yeah, this is just shout out to whoever it was in the very late 90s and early 2000s who was selling these books used online from Canada and who would send them to me with Prince Edward Island postcards in them. That was very special to a young teenager. That was really great. And again, the beginning, the online shopping made this collection possible. Like, I don't know how I, as like a 13, 14, 15-year-old girl would have sourced these books before Amazon, before the internet, and like having these books was like everything to me. So I'm the world's changed in many, many ways since the 90s and the 80s and whatever, but like I'm grateful for this at least. But yeah, they've had a rough life. These books, they came with me. I had them for all of high school. I brought them with me to college and kept them in a milk crate. They've moved every time I ever moved. And yes, there's The Road to Yesterday, which again was ultimately a chopped up version of the Blizer Quoted, which is now in print. The Anne of Green Gables in the End was the very first one my grandma gave me when I was 8, and that the dog ate. The dog ate it a little bit. So sorry, he was a puppy. My core set of Anne of Green Gables, which is in very rough shape, is actually on a different shelf in my basement, but these are the non-Anne books. So, and then we are into the Barnes and Noble classics. This was my teenage years, going to Barnes and Noble, reading all the classics and going the back covers and just buying one every time. Tom Jones is so good. There's Gaskell's Life of Charlotte Bronte. We got George Eliot. The Pink Wives and Daughters was my very first Elizabeth Gaskell book, which I love so much. You can see kind of the creasing at the top because it's been read to pieces. Can thank high school English for getting me into mythology. Always a fun topic. Got some more Kipling. Didn't like Kim as much as Just So Stories. King Solomon's Mines, a very early, exciting adventure novel. I feel like people don't read much of H. Rider Haggard these days. Same with Washington Irving. Awesome, awesome early American stuff. Like The Legend of Sleepy Hollow is a comic story. I think it's wild how that's become like so associated with horror, and it's a funny story. It has got Rip Van Winkle in it too. We've got The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, which is one of the few chapter books I've read out loud. When my kids became obsessed with it at like 3 years old, I had to read that book cover to cover out loud like 4 times.
Wow.
Yeah, we got big into that book. There's another Dumas, part of the Three Musketeers series. Arabian Nights. So the thing is, like, Arabian Nights used to be standard childhood reading. Like, there are characters in Montgomery's books that reference stories that, like, children in Montgomery's books that reference stories they've read out of Arabian Nights. Kids don't read that these days, and they're great stories. Like, where do you think the story of Aladdin and the lamp came from? It came from Arabian Nights. So that was a joy to read. Bleak House, my favorite Dickens. It's excellent. One of the very earliest detective stories, actually. And then we've got Wilkie Collins, The Women in White. Excellent book. That's talk about gaslighting. That's a good one. Um, and then we've got Edgar Rice Burroughs' Tarzan of the Apes. Some audiences might find it a little problematic, but it's a great adventure novel too. Um, that's kind of, I think, fallen off a bit. Sounds naughty to be like, I don't think anybody else reads these books, but like, I don't ever run into people who do read these books, so it's kind of my
Well, it's
narrow.
kind of fun to, if you watched the cartoon when you were younger, to then go and discover the real version.
The real version, yeah. Yeah. And then we've got a very miscellaneous shelf. Anne McCaffrey's Dragon Riders of Pern. Such a good trilogy. That's great stuff. More mythology. Uprooted by Naomi Novik, which is one of the few newer books I had. It was really good. What I like about her writing is she is kind of unique in her subject matter and the sort of stories and myths that she digs into. So, um, got for the madding crowd, not maddening, far from the madding crowd. That's that's a good book. Though I think it's funny that the lady gets herself into a tizzy over watching sword fighting, but different strokes for different folks. Robinson Crusoe, which is an excellent book and is a must-read if you like Wilkie Collins, because in The Moonstone, one of the characters is obsessed with Robinson Crusoe and quotes it over and over, so you gotta kinda read them both together. We got some more C.S. Lewis, got The Jesuit Guide to Almost Everything, got some Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers books just make you cry, man. They're so beautiful. Like, just, like, the goodness of that man's heart just comes through, and it's so beautiful to read anything that he actually wrote. So, I think I have another one of his books, like, on my bedside table right now. Um, and then we've got some Puffin classics. I bought these when I was younger, except for Awakened Dreaming. That one was a recent one, but they're cute, they're bright, they're fun to look at on a shelf. They all are good books. Um, Awakened Dreaming's a really good book. Daddy Longlegs by Jean Webster. Teddy Roosevelt was a fan of Jean Webster and wrote her fan mail. Daddy Longlegs is a great story. And then we've got some of the more lesser known Alcotts. She's mostly known for Little Women, obviously, and these are some of her other books. They were until recently, I think these are really recent editions. You had to, like, get some dodgy paperbacks from the '80s or '90s. They were I think they were out of print for a hot minute in there, but they are back in print now. They're for somebody who likes bright colors, I think these editions are maybe even a bit too bright for me, but I'm glad to have them. I'd rather have a new mass market paper book than one from the '80s just because of condition purposes. And then, Glimpses of the Moon, that is Edith Wharton, that I think just got reissued by I don't know who that publisher is, but they've been kind of reissuing forgotten classics. Living Great Lakes, I mean, are you from the Midwest if you don't have a book on the Great Lakes or the Edmund Fitzgerald? Probably not. S and then the Persuasion is another one of the deluxe editions that have been recently issued. More Anne McCaffrey, The Chosen, which I had to read in high school and just reread for book club, and I'm glad I reread it because I didn't like it in high school, and it kind of, spoke to me a lot more as an adult. Angel Island, I have not read yet. That's, a new one. And same with The Mists of Avalon, actually. I got that at a library book sale for, like, 50 cents, so that's on my to-read list there. Arthurian legends are always fun, though, I'm sure I'll like it when I get to it. Got War and Peace. I had never read it before. I was at my best friend's house, and she had that edition on her shelf, and I'm like, "Well, that looks really pretty. I'm gonna go out and buy it." So I went out and bought it, and I read it. I mean, I think it's probably pretentious to talk about how great War and Peace is. I'm sure many more educated and articulate people could do that for me. Yeah, Bridget Jones's Diary, which was inspired loosely by Austen's Pride and Prejudice. Very funny movie. Red House Mystery is a golden era detective novel by A. Milne, the Winnie the Pooh author. It's pretty good. It's not like the very best mystery you'll ever read, but it's a locked room mystery and it's a lot of fun. Then I have not the complete Peter Whimsy, but by Dorothy Sayers, but a pretty good set. I love these editions. I think the spines on these are great. The color is great. They're fun to look at and obviously fun to read, but I really enjoy this set.
Uh, do
Strat
you have, did
Hmm?
you read Dorothy Sayers' book on homeschooling, or I forget what it's called,
No,
or Tools of Learning?
I didn't. I think I saw it for sale and I was going to buy it and it sold out before I could.
Mm.
I buy quite a few new books off Book Outlet because 'cause they're super cheap, and they had one of her not mysteries, and I was like, "Oh, I should buy that," and then, like, it sold out really fast. Have you read it?
Um, I can't remember how much of it I've read, but it's a core text for homeschoolers and
Oh.
just kind of recovering some of the older approaches to teaching, and so that's
Wow,
uh, why it's popular with some homeschoolers. Is it's kind of an talks about the trivium and stuff like that.
that makes sense. I do education is such an interesting thing for me, like, in terms of books, because when you read a lot of classic books like I do, these authors all seem to have a shared language that I feel very excluded from. Because I think education used to be like this, but this. Like, it was narrow, but deep, and everybody who was, like, well-educated was reading and being educated with the same literature, like, the like, same things. Like, it was more universal. And nowadays, education is very much like this, and, like, you can't even guarantee that an American high schooler will graduate with reading Shakespeare. And so the sort of commonality in language and literary references is, like, lost because it's so like, they'll just like, you read a book from, like, 1910, and the author will just throw out a quote, and that they expect you as the reader to know where it's from and what it means and the context, and you're just like, "Yeah, I'm gonna have to Google that because I do not understand." My favorite example of that, though, is Charlotte Bronte's Villette, where she expects the reader to basically know French. I'm like, "Girl, I do not know French." Like, there are whole, like, chunks in French, and I'm like, "Yep, we've lost that. Your average reader these days might not speak French." So, yeah, those are my broad thoughts on literature reading. There's another copy of Cold Comfort Farm there. I just liked the cover. The Diana Wynne Jones Howl's Moving Castle trilogy. So delightful. I have my eye on the, Folio Society of Howl's Moving Castle just because I love it so much, and the illustrations from what I've seen are gorgeous, but what a great book that is. Then Stella Gibbon 2 more by Stella Gibbons, Christmas at Cold Comfort Farm. Excellent short stories. I cannot say how much I love them, though they are I don't know if they beat at everyone's taste. They're a bit kind of conservative in their outlook. Like, one of my favorite stories in it is there's one called, Friend of Man, about a woman who has a lot of men friends and how she gets, like, sick and tired of them and just wants to get married. And that's very obviously a very distilled version of the story, but they all kind of almost all the stories at the end affirm, like, the status quo of, like, marriage being good and, like, don't step outside of it, but they're very good stories, very funny, very witty. Nightingale Wood is, Stella Gibbons' Cinderella story, like a version of Cinderella, and it is fabulous. It's very, very Jane Austen in tone, very ironic, like, the narrator just lays bare all the absurdities of every single one of her characters, like, the hero is, like, shown to kind of be a bit of a bore, like, and the main character girl is kind of shown to be maybe not the lightest bulb in the box, but it's great. The next 2 books are from Persephone Press, whose mission is to kind of find forgotten classics. In this case, The Making of a Marchioness by Frances Hodgson Burnett, who's most famous for A Little Princess and, The Secret Garden, which is a great book. Kinda goes off the rail at the end, but the first half is fantastic. Again, very Austen in tone, narrator being ironic and, like, not sparing her characters at all, in the observations. Miss Pettigrew Lives for a Day is a great story, has a really good adaptation too. There's another copy of Cold Comfort Farm that was purchased just for the cover in that case, and probably the introduction. Then
And
just
I recognize this style from the New Yorker.
oh, it's right behind me.
I don't know if you know yeah, we can take a look at that.
There you go. This was, can see who is illustrated by. Um,
She's one of the most distinctive artists for the New Yorker.
huh. It doesn't say on it doesn't say on the copyright page who the cover art's by. But we're on the says who the introduction's by. Huh. You could be right. You seem to know much more about it than I do, so I will take your word for that. But I'm not seeing anything about who the cover art is by. It's a fun cover though, right? And again, it has like the Austen. I love those cut pages like that.
Is there any chance it's on the inside of the back cover?
It's a blank.
On that
Oh, here it is. Oh, it's on the back. Cover art by R. Chest.
Yeah.
So you were right. You got it. Good eye. That's impressive. Yeah.
She does a lot of, I think she does a lot of books, not necessarily book covers, but she's a pretty prolific, and I think one of the best cartoonists for the New Yorker.
Yeah, but I saw this cover and I had to get it because the art was great. So it makes sense that she's very famous. Oh, and that last Pride and Prejudice. This is a super interesting edition. It's a very recent one. They hired Bill Donovan, who is a fashion artist, to do the cover and illustration for this. He was the artist in residence for Dior. So these are like high fashion watercolor illustrations and very different, very unique. So, and it has this, whatever this fabric is on the side is very like luxe feeling. So this was something, like I said, I buy most of my books used. I bought this one new because I'm just like, I just have to have it. Like, it's just so fabulous.
Wow. I was going to ask if we could take a look at the Folio Society Jane, one of those Jane Austens, because you had mentioned the art.
Sure. So I'm under the impression that these were first published in the 70s and they kept up with these editions through the 90s. And it's only been in the 2000s that they switched them over. So they're pretty readily available used online, though the prices will vary. Something between like $90 to like $500 for the set. But so yeah, this is an example of the wood block. So these were like hand carved. I think they took forever to make. Like I feel like this was a multi-year production to make these illustrations by I think Joan Haskell. So very, very famous. Just to make sure. And
I
they're
really
lovely.
like wood block art.
What? Oh, you do?
Yeah, I like that style.
I really like these illustrations because they are reminiscent of the Hugh Thompson illustrations from the 1800s, I think. Like they have the appropriate vibe.
Exactly.
Like they have the right feeling for the novel. So that's that shelf. Oh. Oh wait. Oh, and then I forgot to mention it, but The Lady Vanishes in there. That by Evelina White. She was another mostly forgotten golden era kind of thriller detective novel. The book was not originally entitled The Lady Vanishes. I think it was like it's something about a wheel. I can't quite remember. But Hitchcock took that and adapted it into a movie he titled The Lady Vanishes. So reissues of the book have changed the title to match the Hitchcock film. And the Hitchcock film's really good too. And the book is great. Funny. It's a funny book. It's a funny book.
Did you say anything about this one?
Oh, that's just it's kind of not trivia, but kind of like trivia about
Ooh.
the Victorian era. Like, just like kind of random fact book. It's a fact book, but pertaining to authors. This shelf. So The Little Woman and Little Men, I've had that since there's Farewell to Arms there. I had to buy that in high school. I don't really care for Hemingway. Sorry to everybody who loves Hemingway. He's a little stark. Little stark. But I got that in the 90s. And then on the shelf there should be a For the Little Women, I got that in the 90s. It was like a Christmas gift when I was a little girl. And when I was younger, when I was little, I thought that was a very rich book, very fancy. I mean, I do not think that is real leather, but I thought it was, and it was like my fancy book. So just, I think in the last couple of years, I bought the corresponding Anne of Green Gables and Pride and Prejudice just kind of for the fun of it. They are cheap enough. They are not fancy. They are not fancy editions. They are very cheap editions. So, yeah. And then, Alexander Hamilton, that's the biography the musical is based on. I bought that before it was cool. I bought that biography before Hamilton even became a musical, but I didn't actually like it very much. Like when I was saying about the Teddy Roosevelt biographies where the author didn't have an opinion, it felt like the author had an opinion for Hamilton. Like it felt when I was reading it like he was kind of twisting things to keep Hamilton in a very favorable light. So I didn't care for that very much. I was like a weird 8th grader who thought Alexander Hamilton was really cool. So that's why I bought that book to begin with, because I was like, I'm going to read about
How
this.
did that happen?
I don't know. It was just like middle school history class. I remember going, this guy's cool. I like the sound of this guy. Teenagers, right? The Chicago Manual of Style I had to buy for a course in college. It's just bright orange and looks good on a shelf. That's why it is not in a bin in the basement. I do not typically consult it for anything. The next book my mom got for me, it's Confessions of a Jane Austen Addict. I didn't like it very much, but again, it's not in a bin in the basement because it looks good on the shelf. And we've got the Harry Potters. It's kind of like the rainbow shelf. Harry Potters, I think definitely like first American printing editions because I was one of those kids who got the book the day it came out. But I guess my parents threw out the dust covers, so we don't have those anymore. And they're also in very poor shape because they were read a lot, like a lot. And again, there's the Anne of Green Gables, not a fancy edition. Another Jane Austen biography, some more Agatha Christie, more Shel Silverstein, because the best. Not big into poetry reading, but if I'm going to read poetry, it's going to be Shel Silverstein. And then Pride and Prejudice and more Harry Potter. That one's just the rainbow shelf. It's mostly there to look good because, again, it's part of our living space. Down here, we've got more Nortons. I paid like probably like $100 for that big, thick Norton anthology of English literature, so I will never part with it. Like, represents real money. And some E.L. Conisberg. I have a pretty good chunk of young adult and kids chapter books that are mostly basemented, but that's there. We've got Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I liked the look of that edition. It was very, very cheap at a library sale. Same with Marianne by du Maurier. Rebecca's less of a suggestion for people to read after Jane Austen. It's much more of a what to read after you've fallen in love with Jane Eyre. But very similar vibes. Great book. Unabridged Mark Twain. Love Mark Twain. Very funny. He hated Jane Austen, if you didn't know that. He thought she
Okay.
was, like, trash. Made some very, very slightly nasty in tone comments about her writing, but I'll forgive him because
A lot of people thought Mark Twain was trash, so.
Oh, really? I thought he's, like, the great American
Well,
author.
he's thought of that way now, but he's got an interesting biography.
Oh, I should look into that. Um, it's funny now that I'm looking at it because Charlotte Bronte also did not like Jane Austen's writing and had comments in one of her surviving letters. So it's kind of funny that they ended up together. They can Their shades can loathe Austen together on my bookshelf. And then I have another copy of Alcott's 8 Cousins. I don't think that's a first edition, but it is quite old. It's a sweet, like it's a sweet story for girls. like Sherlock Holmes commentary, which is great. I actually really love these. I love finding out like the little bits and pieces about all the short stories and things that you might have missed or might not have understood as a modern reader. So it was a great book to pick up. And then we have another novel by Naomi Novik. That one's really interesting because it's kind of rooted in like Jewish folklore. And again, that's like what I like about her writing is she kind of reaches for folklore that's less explored, like outside of like the Grimms and Anderson, the guy who wrote The Little Mermaid, whose name has escaped me at the moment, and I feel very silly. Um, Tanner prefaces to Shakespeare. I have not read that yet, but I had to have it, and I had to have it because Tony Tanner's introduction to Pride and Prejudice, which was the standard in all the Penguin editions up to like 2000 and something, is the most incredible piece of literary scholarship I have ever read in my life. And I'm like, if this man can write like this about Jane Austen, I need to have what he's going to write about Shakespeare to have on hand. So I went out and I bought that. But yeah, just an incredible scholar and writer in his own right. This was my AP US history textbook. I had to buy it. It looks good on a shelf. That's why it's there. It's interesting in that it's a narrative history. There are not many textbooks that are written in a narrative form where it like reads as a storybook instead of like having big pull out vocabulary words and headings. Like it writes American history as a story. So actually like enjoyed that. I can't say there are many textbooks in my life where I'm like, I'll sit and read this, but I sat and read that. It was good. And then another anthology that was purchased for a college course right there. And it represents too much money to ever just to ever part with. Mm. So up here, over on there, those are Macmillan Collectors Libraries. I think before on my red shelf, I had The Hunchback of Notre Dame and Just So Stories. They were Macmillan bought out that company. So yes, those. So they're actually the same style, size, but like Macmillan changed the colors. But they bought out that publisher and now produce their own. They're very small. People do not enjoy buying them. I think they look really nice on a shelf, but they are very, very, very small. The Jane Austen one got super cheap. I have two books edited by Becky Brown, and they're a nice selection of classic stories. One is classic love stories, the other is classic Christmas stories. Um, Crime and Punishment, I have not gotten around to reading yet. Actually bought that for my husband because he said he wanted to read it, but I don't think he's going to, but we can be optimistic.
Do you remember any of the classic love stories that are featured in here?
Not offhand, but I can grab it and take a look. Let's see. I just read the Christmas one in December, so that one will refresh her in my mind. Oh, it doesn't have a table. Oh, here it is. Chekhov, The Lady with the Dog, Elizabeth Taylor Flesh, F. Scott Fitzgerald, The Lees of Happiness, Catherine Mansfield, Mr. and Mrs. Dove, O. Henry, The Romance of a Busy Broker, May Sinclair, Lena, I don't know, Race, Alice Dunbar Nelson, The Fisherman of Past Christian, H.G. Wells, In the Modern View, Kate Chopin, Lilacs, Dostoevsky, A Little Hero, Zora Neale Hurston, The Gilded Sixpence, D.H. Lawrence, The Horse Dealer's Daughter, Carson McCullers, A Tree, a Rock, a Cloud, and Dorothy Edwards in the Summertime. Um, the funny thing about a book of love stories like this, you pick it up like, oh, that's going to be happy reading. It's funny how they find the love stories that are not a happy reading. They're a little sometimes more tragic love than the Jane Austen fulfilled love stories. But
Would you mind showing that one or one of the other ones? Because the whole kind of, it's a very artistic the way they put it together with I'd like to see, the inside kind of, because they just did a lot with it, and I'd like to show all the different kind of angles of that book in particular.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a different one down.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I loved the cover photo selection for this one. It just was like such an evocative photo. But yeah, I know they're very small, but I love these books. Like the end paper is gorgeous. They're gold leaf. Like they have the little tucked in bookmarks. I just they feel fancy. They
It's
feel
sort
like,
of the size of a lobe,
yeah.
the lobe classical. Could you take the dust jacket off so we could see the
So the older ones are all red, and Macmillan's moved to a very pretty light blue. Though I suspect it would be very easy to get this dirty
yeah.
with improper handling.
I've
But
seen them a lot on YouTube, and I've never actually kind of looked at one, and they're just really well done.
they're so pretty. They're so pretty.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fancy, like, right? Um,
And is it gilded on the bottom also?
yeah, all
They don't
around.
always do that, all three.
I love these. I know I just every time when I see them discussed on, for example, Reddit, they're like, "Oh, they're so tiny." I'm like, "But they're gorgeous. They're so pretty."
Sort of
Um,
that Tiffany blue.
yeah, right? I have a KitchenAid mixer that I specifically got in the Tiffany blue. So yes.
Was there another one you pulled down? Because it looked like you got two of them.
Yeah, this one just for my personal journey, I purchased at the New York Public Library's bookstore. So when you buy a book from the New York Public Library's bookstore, they stamp it for you.
Well,
So you can always remember. But this one is Arsène Lupin, which I think became very popular in recent years because of the Netflix series, which is excellent. So
could you
Golden
show the
Era,
back of it?
sure. Golden Era detective novel, but French. So this is in translation. So
Did you show the back of the other one?
no, just another photo, a bit of sticker residue on it, but yeah, they're great books, and they have a great selection. I'm using great a lot, like, what they've chosen to put out there is slightly different than, a l the more standard classics, like, My Family and Other Animals, and Arsène Lupin, and one of my absolute favorite books, A Town Like Alice. Like, this is not, um, what you'll find with the normal standard classics publishers. Like, they have a bit of a better diversity of titles, I find, than your standard classics publishers. So, that's I'm a big fan of this series. I think I was actually just scrolling through their catalog this week trying to find a few more titles. But, so yeah, My Family and Other Animals, that's a fun memoir. Arsène Lupin is a golden era detective series, in French. Fun, very, very fun. Town Like Alice, cannot recommend this book enough. It is amazing, and it's really unique. It takes place half the book takes place in very rural Australia post World War II, which is a setting that I don't come across very often in my reading, and, yeah, it's, Neville Shute, I think, is also mostly famous for a dystopian novel he wrote, like, I don't remember the title of that, but he wrote a dystopian novel that was very famous, and this one that I think, in Alice Springs, Australia, they have, like, a sign up commemorating this book, so it's in some circles, it's very famous, and it
She looks like sort of like Audrey Hepburn.
yeah, kind of. The story takes place. It starts at the beginning of World War II, and the young woman is in Malaysia or Malaya? But basically, like, the country she's in gets taken over by the Japanese right away, and, they send all the British men off to a camp, a prison camp, but they don't know what to do with the women because they refuse to put the women in the camp with the men. So then the women get marched around for, like, the duration of the war and go through many hardships, and the main character in the story, who I think this woman's supposed to represent, meets an Australian man on her journeys, and after the war, she wants to find him again because he does her a service, and, or she wants to go where he's from or something. She goes basically, ultimately, she ends up in Australia, and, again, it's such a unique setting, and the story is very well written, and it's, like, a beautiful story, and I tend to read novels that are written more by women, and this is one of the exceptions, but it was like a Pride and Prejudice moment where I sat and thought about this book for weeks, like, couldn't get it out of my head. So good.
It's a very evocative photo.
Right? Like, I saw that, I'm like, I need that copy." Like, and Daughter Time is another golden era detective novel. That one's interesting because it is a fictional examination of a real historical mystery, which is, um I think it's a study of the life of Richard III and whether he murdered his nephews, I think. The Enchanted April is a delightful, delightful story about 4 women, ill-assorted women on an Italian vacation and how it changes their lives being in a beautiful Italian castle. And it's very that one is another excellent what to read when you're done with Jane Austen, very same sort of ironic tone. The next set is the Penguin Red edition of Jane Austen. For reasons best known to Penguin, Northanger Abbey didn't get included as part of the box set, so it had to be purchased separately. Um, that is a set I bought solely because of the cover art. They're all line drawings with just a pop of color. I think they're gorgeous. I don't know if they have any particular value outside of that. This was the definite, "I need these covers, they're so pretty."
It
So, yeah.
almost has a little bit of that manga look.
Yeah, kind of.
The eyebrows,
Yeah.
eyelashes.
Oh, I'm assuming the cover illustrator is Japanese because it's Kazuko Nomoto? So, just I loved those. I had to get them for their cover art. And then the next set on that shelf is the, Everyman's Library standard, not movie tie-in editions of Jane Austen, which I think just if you want a nice hardback set with good introduction, good quality cover, got the little bookmarks built in, I think that's kind of like you're set to go. The cover art's very standard classic literature, but they're like overall, I'd give them the edge for if you just need a set of classics. You can't go wrong with that. Then the next shelf is more adventures in having $10 in my pocket and going to buy, Barnes& and Noble classics. I it makes me feel, like, a little sad sometimes when I look at these books because I feel sad that the world isn't reading them too. Like, The Scarlet Pimpernel is such an amazing adventure story, and Ivanhoe, that was standard reading. Everybody read Ivanhoe back in the day. Like, Sir Walter Scott was, like, the author. He did like Jane Austen. I think he reviewed Emma favorably, but that's a great book, and The Three Musketeers is a great adventure book. And funny too. I don't know why it stuck with me, but there's a joke in it about, the 3 French musketeers have to go to England, and they're complaining that they have to drink the beer there, and they don't wanna drink the beer because 'cause they're French and they drink wine. Um, the essential tales and poems of Edgar Allan Poe, his short story work is, like, unmatched. The Four Feathers, fabulous, fabulous adventure novel. Amazing. I've read that one to death too. Um And A.E.W. Mason actually also wrote a series of golden era detective novels, and they've mostly been forgotten about. I think they're all completely out of print, but they're very good. I think his stories came before Agatha Christie's, and he's considered to be a big inspiration of hers. His Detective Hanaud or something like that. But they're public domain. You can read them online, but he was a very famous author in his day too, and not much talked about. Enchanted Castle and Five Children and It, very famous children's stories. I think more so in the United Kingdom than in America. We got Jules Verne. I think that's say Jules. Room with a View, excellent book. Candide by Voltaire, hilarious. There's my copy of The Importance of Being Earnest that's been read to death. And Don Quixote I eventually will read it, maybe in another decade. We got some more Oscar Wilde, the novel, and then another set of Barnes & Noble classics, but a different edition. We got 39 Steps, one of the earliest thriller novels, more Agatha Christie, Dumas, Elizabeth Gaskell, The Mysteries of Udolpho, which is very, very long and was referenced by Jane Austen in Northanger Abbey, and The Innocence and Wisdom of Father Brown, which is short story detective type stories. And I think G.K. Chesterton was a big Catholic apologist too, but also wrote mystery novels. So yes, if only I had known what the public domain was back in the day, I could have saved a lot of money. All right, so the next shelf starts off with 4 Marvel Comics. Marvel Comics adapted 4 of Jane Austen's novels. For reasons best known to them, only 3 were issued in hardcover, in omnibus editions. The other one is paperback. They're interesting in that they kind of engendered a bit of anger in Austen fans, mostly because look at this cover for Pride and Prejudice. Isn't this gorgeous? Like, it's gorgeous. It's funny. It looks like a fashion magazine. But, like, the internal artwork does not match the cover vibes at all. It is, in fact, like, kind of ugly. No offense to whoever made it, but it's a little ugly. Like, it's a little garish. So ultimately, it's kind of something I just collected for the cover, and I think it's pretty neat to have. The other Austen Marvel comics, this one is another one where the cover artwork, so neat, doesn't quite match the interior.
The
But
interior artwork has that sort of early computer illustration.
yeah, it doesn't quite go. The other two though, the cover artwork does match I think they had the same illustrator for the covers as the um comics. I don't think my personal opinion is I don't think the writing, like the actual adaptation is all that great, but they're fun to have. Like, it's a fun thing for a collector to have, I think, in their collections. But then we get into my shelf of scholarship, my upstairs shelf of scholarship. So, these are all things I bought like on my own. They weren't for a college course because I love learning about what I love. Like, I love Jane Austen, so I mean, I'm gonna get these. The Longman Cultural Editions are, um, they say what they are. They're excellent for cultural context. Like, if you want to learn about the culture around a story, like, you can't get better than that. The Nortons have culture and criticism in them. So they're like a good mix if you want that. But I mean, Nortons are kind of like the gold standard. There's a reason that pretty much every college literature course says, get the Norton, get the Norton. They're really they're 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 excellent for academic standards. And I think Broadview is a newer publisher from what I understand. Um, and they've come in hot with really great, nice scholarly editions of classics, like beautifully edited, with thoughtful content. Their original Austen, they've reissued it then, but since then, but their original Austen covers are not good. Like they were all like Victorian era portraits, which didn't make any sense to anybody, but they've since reissued it with more appropriate illustrations. I've also got The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins and another copy of Anne of Green Gables popped in there, and an Anne of Green Gables Norton. So, and then the Cambridge companions, which are shorter and more condensed, but they're also just they're great. They're excellent. I love reading about books. But they're if you want to put together, like if you have a favorite classic novel and you want to learn about it, you get a Norton and the Broadview and a Cambridge Companion, though they're kind of limited, and same with the Longviews, but you can learn what you need to learn. Like it's kind of self-taught, like a self-taught college course. You can kind of put your own together. And the Penguin classics, the black ones, um, those two little Jane Austen ones, I just thought they were cute. So I imported them from England. There's a bookseller, an online bookseller in the UK. Blackwell's is a great source of books that are published for UK audiences and they ship to America for free. So thank you, Blackwell's. Um, the next book is 84 Charing Cross Road, which is a book for book lovers. If you don't know what it is the correspondence between Helen Hanff and a bookstore in London. She lived in New York, and she was writing to a used bookstore in London asking for books that she wanted, and it became like a decades-long correspondence, and most of the letters were published in this book, and they all became friends, and it's a great book. I picked it up because there's a little bookstore by where my grandparents live, and it's just a sweet store, and I love popping in there and grabbing a book, and that's the one I picked up last year, and yeah, it's a great book. And also, it's interesting to read because you can what the author book she was requesting, like, she was a big Austen fan, and so you can look at what she was requesting and kind of, like, build your own to-read list off what she was looking for. Then I've got some Bernard Shaw, Graham Greene, both excellent authors. I just read Pygmalion for the first time this year, and I was shocked. If you don't know, My Fair Lady, the musical, and subsequently the movie, is based off that play, and I did not realize that the musical is like the talking is like word for word from the play. Like, it is one of the closest adaptations I've ever seen for a book to a film. Like, it's almost line for line, and that kind of shocked me. I didn't expect that because usually adaptations take so many liberties with the source material. I mean, that one did take, obviously, huge liberties with the source material in its own ways with the songs and the ending, but the actual, like, movie, the text is mostly from the play. Then, I have a Jane Austen Pride and Prejudice, which I did not want because I bought that to get the Tony Tanner introduction, and that they put in a new introduction in that edition that says, "You should read the excellent introduction by Tony Tanner that our previous editions had." I'm like, why not just keep that edition? I didn't make a lot of sense to me. So, that's that. We have more Austen. And my favorite, Bronte, The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, which is such a good book. So before its time in its treatment of a woman wanting to escape an abusive alcoholic husband. Like, that was groundbreaking for that there was even a book about that written in the early 1800s, and it is fabulous, and I do not understand why Charlotte Bronte tried to repress that after Anne's death because, like, it's a good book. We got some more Elizabeth Gaskell. Her Gothic tales are really good Victorian era sort of short stories, kind of touching on horror and scariness and ghosts and all that. Another copy of North and South. My original copy of Cold Comfort Farm with the fabulous cow picture, right? Who wouldn't want this cow? And find out why this cow is on the cover. I wanted this cow on the cover. Loved that cow. So that was but started me off on my Stella Gibbons journey there. She by H.R.R. Haggard, which is a really kind of odd adventure novel, but well worth reading. House of Seven Gables, kind of an American classic, fantastic. Barbara Pym, Excellent Women, fantastic book too. Captain Blood, probably my favorite adventure novel. That's a great one. It's about an Irish doctor, or Scottish, I think Irish, who gets accidentally caught up in revolution and sent to the Americas as a slave. And then through a series of events becomes like the ultimate pirate captain. It's a fantastic book.
Well,
More Voltaire, a copy of Wives and Daughters that I bought just for the introduction, a very well-beloved copy of Vanity Fair. I think I got that as a teenager, and I've beaten it up a bit. Very sorry, Vanity Fair. You were worth it. The Talmud. I just bought that because I reread The Chosen, and I got a good deal on this. And I had read something online that said the introduction alone is worth the cost of the price. I actually started reading the introduction yesterday and got a couple pages into it. Anthony Trollope, I think underrated, maybe, is he? It's hard to say. I think a lot of people do recommend him. That he is a good author. Little wordy sometimes, but I think he did write, like he wrote to get paid, so kind of explains his very prolific output. I haven't read The Virginian yet. That one is a new book for me, but I'm looking forward to it. I'm trying to get a bit more into American literature, so that should be fun. My very first cowboy book. Then The Moonstone, another Barnes& and Noble classic. And Clarissa. I only read it once. It looks like that because I read it against my will for a college course, and it's so long. It's so long. It just keeps going and going. And it's so long, and like 5 things happen in it. I think when it was written, it was the longest novel in the English language, and it held that distinction for a very long time.
I was going to say, do you think this is the longest novel you've ever read?
Yes, definitely. But yeah, I think for a while it held the record for the longest novel written in English. It's very long, and it's in letters too. But I read it and I'm like, I get you, Henry Fielding. I get it. I get why somebody who is capable would sit down and read something like this and say, I need to write a rebuttal novel to all this weeping. I'm like, yes, get it. Okay, we've got my husband's family Bible. And then this is just the black shelf. We've got more Agatha Christie, The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, which is a newer book. Very interesting. The twist at the end was a surprise. I liked that one. More Dorothy Sayers, Lord Peter. I think that's like the collected short stories. Another kind of forgotten Louisa Alcott book. Another Patricia C. Reed, The Dark Lord's Daughter, which very new. That's a new one. I recommend it. It's very interesting. It's like, what if you were like it's about a girl who's living in Minnesota, and then she gets sucked into a fantasy world where she finds out she was kidnapped from as a baby, and she was the Dark Lord's daughter, and she's kind of like just walking around like, why do we do this like this? Like, why are we like dark? Which sounds very trite, like, but it's funny. It's a young adult book. It's a good one. Hetty's Folly, which is a biography on Hetty Lamar, who was an inventor and not just a beautiful silver screen actress. More Shel Silverstein, more Harry Potter without the dust jackets. my only books I don't have the dust jackets for, and more Agatha Christie. And the third, Colonel Roosevelt, is the third in the Edmund Morris Roosevelt trilogy, is sad. It's sad. It was sad. Um, then an Eric Larson book, which is newer, nonfiction, The Story of the Lusitania, very interesting. And then an Audrey Hepburn biography, because I was a teenage girl once, and we all go through our Audrey Hepburn phase, right? Like, you're like, I don't know, I'm a dude. Like, what are you talking about?
Is it a good one?
It is actually. Donald Spoto is. I read a few Hepburn biographies in my day, and that's by far the best one. Very balanced, very, very thorough. I liked it. It was a good. I think I read his Grace Kelly biography too, and that was a good one. But yeah, none of my books are very valuable in and of themselves, and I think I said at the beginning, I just care so much more about what's in them, like the stories. They're such good stories. Okay, so finally, the shelf of old. Um, Daddy Longlegs is still in print. I just got that because I liked the cover. I loved the story, and I just wanted to have like a first edition of it. A Modern Comedy is part of John Galsworthy, the Forsyte Saga. The Forsyte, I think it's the sequel trilogy, and it is less in print, though it might be in print now because I think the Forsytes have just gotten a very odd, from what I've heard, adaptation, so it could possibly be back in print, but I love Galsworthy, very much worth owning. Making of a Marchioness, that's just another one. I loved it so much, I wanted to find a first edition of it. Watching at My Gates is a random book I inherited from my great-grandmother. It has 3 biographies in it, including Nathaniel Hawthorne's daughter, who is on her way to becoming a saint in the Catholic Church. So that's like your little-known Nathaniel Hawthorne fact. Like one of his daughters got like way into Catholicism. So yeah, I inherited that from my great-grandma. To Have and to Hold is the next book by Mary Johnston. I believe it was the #1 best-selling book of 1900, and nobody's ever heard of it since. It takes place in the 1600s in America and involves the King of England somehow, and pioneering. The next book is a bit sneaky. I don't actually keep that one on my shelf. I know you're here for the interesting and rare books. This one lives in a box because it is the only book I have that's probably any value. It is Stella Gibbons' The Untidy Gnome. I read an estimate once that there might only be 20 copies of this in the world. I don't know if that's true, but it is a children's book that she wrote. The only children's book she wrote. It has been out of print since it is published. It is considered very rare. Like our library system will not let anybody check it out of the library rare, like very rare, special, actually worth something. I've shown this book to every child and nephew in my family and niece and said, do not ever let anybody pitch this in a dumpster. It's actually worth money. So it's illustrated, it's beautiful. My husband got it for me for my birthday. It's actually a rare and valuable book. I'm scared to handle it. It's like, I feel like I should be wearing gloves and having a page turner, and it should be in its own display case. So it is a very special, precious book, and that's why it does not actually live on a bookshelf, because I don't trust anybody around it.
So you had a previous edition. Like, how did your husband know to get this?
So when I was before Vintage reissued all the Gibbons books, I was hunting down a lot of her books, and you had to basically buy the first editions from the 40s and 50s and 60s. And I heard about this one, and I told him about it, but I'm like, we can't ever buy it though. It's so expensive. Like, I mean, I think there's one for sale right now that's $2,000. But I was browsing the internet casually, and I was like, oh, this one is not that much. I think I think it was less than $200, but he got it. He was listening, I guess, and I got it for my birthday. So it's very special, very precious, and I'm trying to take super good care of it. When we moved, it traveled in my lap from one house to another in its little box. It's like
Wait,
one of the most precious things I own. I'm just like, I take very good care of it. So, yeah, an actual in my library of books that will be eventually sold at a library for 5 cents. This one's actually a, um, a very special book.
is there anything on the back?
No. And I think the reason I got this we got a relatively good deal on it is a little smushed here. It's definitely got, like, foxing going on, and it didn't come with the dust jacket. I think most of the
Mm.
editions I've seen pop up for sale since we bought this have had, dust jackets. So, but still a very rare and special for me, special book. So I'm gonna put it back in its little box that it lives in. And I have the works of Poe, got that at a library sale. Looked pretty neat. Anne's House of Dreams, that is a first American edition. The next set of books are interesting. They are a series of books. They're all interconnected by Florence L. Barclay, who was a very, very popular author in the early 1900s. And again, kind of like fallen off the face of the earth. I don't think her books have been in print since they were originally published, which is a pity because they're good. They're they're a bit melodramatic, a bit overwrought in spots, and they are, they, like, lean in a bit to religion, which I think is less popular in, like, romance type novels in the modern era, but they're they're good. They're well written, they're funny too, like, they're not overly serious. So I like the Victorians and the early 1900 authors who didn't take themselves so seriously. And, I read a lot of books through Google Books and, Project Gutenberg, obviously, and I'd read those online, and I just had to have them, and I got this set, I think for $30. They're not in the best shape, and they all came together, like, they're super faded and they kinda dirty, but I'm happy to have them just because they're worthwhile.
So do you have a Kindle or do you read them just on the computer?
I it's been so, when I worked in academic publishing, it was very seasonal work, like, college textbooks have to be ready for the fall. So during the summer, we were, like, super busy because we had to get all these books out. But in the winter months, we had a very much smaller portfolio, so there's a lot of downtime. So I would just, like, go on Project Gutenberg and sit and scroll and read novels during my downtime. But, um, since I have the Kindle app on my phone, and and Libby and a few other the apps, but, Google and Amazon and I think the University of Pennsylvania, there are quite a few companies that digitize, public domain books, and you can read them for free. Again, if I would have known that back in the day, I could have saved a lot of money, but I'm glad to have my books. One of them, um, I think Google tends to have like, digitized an actual copy of the book, and that's really fun for a book lover because at the end of these old books, they used to put publishers' lists, and if you're lucky, the copy you read has the old publishers' lists in them, and that's kind of how I've always explored, um, non-canon classic literature, like older not guess it depends on your definition of classic literature, but older literature is through reading these publishers lists and going, "Oh, that one looks interesting," and kind of like jumping from book to book to book that way.
Do you listen to audiobooks?
No, I don't have the patience to be talked at. For being a big talker, I think Jane Austen would go to town on that. Somebody who talks too much has a hard time listening. But yeah. So there's a Pink Front Door, which is another Stella Gibbons one that I tracked down before it was reissued. In Apple Blossom Time is another early 1900s like romance novel. It's cute, it's sweet, it's fun. I think the hero of the novel like randomly flies an airplane because like I think back in the day people thought everybody would be flying airplanes around. So that like pops up more than you think it would. But yeah, it's just a sweet book. I liked it so much when I read the digital copy. I tracked down the print. And I think the last one is a very old Alcott. Not a first edition, but elderly of an old-fashioned girl.
The other thing I wanted to ask you is you've mentioned book clubs a number of times, and I'm curious what are you doing multiple book clubs at the same time, or how do you over the years how have you engaged with book clubs?
I haven't really. I actually I really only joined a book club this year. It's a national book club. It's called Well Read Moms. My best friend is in her local chapter and we just moved, so I signed up kind of trying to like make book friends. Um, it's I like it in that it focuses on older books. Like we read The Hunchback of Notre Dame for it, and The Chosen isn't old. I think it's from the 60s, but it focuses on trying to bring moms or basically any woman. I think they actually would allow a man, and they don't discriminate. You can join. It's trying to revive interest in older older novels instead of focusing on the like Oprah's Book of the Month Club, or I think everybody reads Reese Witherspoon these days, right? I think Reese is the
I didn't know that.
oh, I I see it
Reese
on
Witherspoon.
yeah, Reese Witherspoon has her own book club. People love Reese Witherspoon's books, and then they all get made into movies. Something like that. And so this is kind of we have some auxiliary bookshelves in the basement. They're mostly full of my kids' books. We have a lot of children's books, but I have all the revised 1960s Nancy Drews. My grandma used to buy them for me from Sam's Club in the 90s. You could get a big block of them, like 5, 6 of them. And I came in second place in the University of Minnesota Friend of the Library undergraduate book collection contest the second year I joined with my Nancy Drew set. Nancy Drew has a very interesting history literature-wise. They first started being published, I think, in the 1930s, and Nancy Drew was a younger teenager in those books, and, a lot of them were, like, super deeply racist too, like, don't get me like, they had a lot of real bad stereotypes in them. So in the 1960s and Carolyn Keene never existed, there's a syndicate. I don't remember the name of the syndicate, but basically this guy was like hired a bunch of ghost authors, and their jobs were to turn out the Bobbsey twins and the Hardy Boys and the Nancy Drew books. And it was that man's daughter who kind of spearheaded revising them all in like the 60s. So the yellowback Nancy Drews are the revised editions. And they got rid of like the real overtly racist stuff. They aged Nancy Drew up to 18. The formats got standardized. I think they're all the exact amount of chapters. And yeah, I just think it's like interesting how the history of how these stories were. But when she spearheaded the revision, she also started like telling everybody that she was the Carolyn Keene and wrote all these books, and she didn't. Like there was one ghost author in particular who actually wrote the majority of them. And there's always like this like tension, this back and forth over who the real Carolyn Keene is. I've I have not done it yet, but it has been my goal for quite some time now to reread all of these and make a list of Nancy's achievements because it's insane. Like for 18, like one book, she is a master scuba diver. The next book, she knows Morse code and tap dancing. The third book, she can fly a helicopter. The fourth book, she's like an expert evasive driver. And I just think it would be so much fun to have a list of all of Nancy's achievements because, like, by goodness, she's like better than Captain America. She can do
It's like
everything.
Jason Bourne, but
Yeah, right? And she's just 18. just 18-year-old high school graduate who can do all these things. And then I have a few older ones. The the bright yellows are very plasticky, actually. They were originally issued more looking like the older paperback ones. So they're still they're very formulaic. The bad guy is whoever looks shifty and has like dark eyebrows. If somebody's got dark eyebrows and a shifty look, they're the bad guy. It's only going to be a few more chapters till Nancy catches them doing something or gets kidnapped by them temporarily. And then the next shelf is my Jane Austen kind of scholarship dump. Like I took that Oxford course and I'm like, honey, I need to buy all these books so I can write 1 2-page long essay. How will I write a good essay if I don't have all this scholarship to pull from? An essay that I'm not going to get graded on because I paid for this course for fun. But so I have the Companion to Jane Austen edited by Claudia Johnson. Claudia Johnson's Jane Austen. Jane Austen for Dummies, which is much better than it has any business being. Jane Austen in context. A different copy of the Broadview Persuasion that has a different cover. Tony Tanner's Jane Austen. Gosh, like the way he wrote is beautiful. Like you've not read scholarship like that. It's gorgeous. Like they should give awards for scholarly writing. Maybe they do. I don't know. I accidentally bought 2 copies of the Everyman Library's Jane Austen. I'm probably going to put that in my little free library at some point, but I have not.
How did you get started with that, the little free library?
My brother made me one.
Oh, well.
He took an old kitchen cabinet and made it look like a house and painted. My brother's very artistic and he made it for me. It's this gorgeous little thing. But we now live in a neighborhood with a homeowners association, and the homeowners association is like, I don't think you can put out your library. And I was like, so we'll see. Right now the library is living in the garage and it is very sad. And all the books that are supposed to be in it are in a box in the basement and they're very sad. Like I said, my brother built it out of an old kitchen cabinet. So it's like rectangular with big double doors. It has a little peaked roof and a chimney. It's painted blue, and on the side he took strips of wood and painted them like they look like books and nailed them on the side. So that was a very wonderful Christmas present from a very wonderful brother. And
when was that?
It was a few years ago. It was actually a little awkward. We used to live in a very small neighborhood, and one of our neighbors had a little free library up, and I had to like go over to her and like, I'm not trying to encroach on your little free library territory, but is it okay if I put up my own little free library? So we can they're not competing, but maybe complementary libraries.
She didn't also have like a bunch of Jane Austen in there?
No, she was a retired librarian, and she would, I think, volunteer at the library, and when people donated books to the library, she would, like, snag some of the ones she thought people would like and bring them back home, and that's how she did it.
So how'd you decide did you have like a theme for your little free library or?
Uh, no, if I ever bought a book that I didn't end up liking, I'd put it in there. I would go to our library had a standing, like, purchase room, like, books that were donated, they would sell them to patrons to kind of raise money for the library, so they always had, like, a running bookshop, so if it was a book I loved, I would go and I saw a copy of it, I'd buy it from the library and put it in my library, so I guess it wasn't a free for me library, but it was free for the people. Like, if it was like, "I wanna share this book," like, "I'm gonna buy this book so somebody else can have
That's
it."
awesome.
So that's kinda how I ran it. And we have, like, a ton of books still. Another Jane Austen biography, Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, which I actually had on pre-order when it came out, and I was very excited for it. I did not like it very much, but held on to it for the principle of the matter. The Jane Austen escape room book, bought it at one of our local bookstores with a gift certificate. It was a fun little thing. Got the husband involved. He liked it. Jane Austen and her art. I bought that at the John R. King used bookstore in Detroit, which is a very famous used bookstore. I think it's in an old bakery factory. It's gigantic. But this book is considered kind of the piece that revived scholarly interest in Jane Austen in like the 1930s. Um, Jane Austen was was popular-ish when she was originally published. Then her family issued a memoir of her in the 1870s, and that got people interested in her again. And then it kind of fell off until like the early 1900s when interest in her work sort of revived again. And the Lascelles book was a big part of it, that Jane Austen and her art. That was a big part of the reviving interest. And then
And what does it actually talk about in terms of her? What's the new angle or the new perspective?
yeah, it's just kind of like criticism. It's just I'm not sure. I'm not authoritative enough to tell you exactly what it was in that book that made it unique.
Okay.
But it's just it was kind of like the start of Austen scholarship in the 1900s. And then that kind of faded, ugly looking one that just says Austen on it. That I think is an R.W. Chapman, and he was a major part of Austen scholarship in the early 1900s. He was the editor for the early Oxford editions. Like he made the editorial decisions and wrote the introductions. So he was a major player, and that's why I picked that one up. The Austen Pride and Prejudice with a half sticker on it, I bought just to get that Tony Tanner introduction. And then I've got two other older Austen editions. And then Marrying Mr. Darcy is a board game, which is not very good, but I like it anyway. It was a gift. I have a Jane Austen jigsaw puzzle, which is a very nice puzzle. I like that puzzle. It's fun to build. Thank you to my in-laws for getting that for me. And that's my original Anne of Green Gables series. It didn't quite fit on the shelves up here, but it's not any less worthy of respect, but it is in very horrible shape. I don't actually think the cover of Rilla of Ingleside is even attached anymore. Like if these are like the definition of books that were loved to death. Like they are not in good shape, but it's because they have been read through so many times. But
Kind of interesting that sometimes she's blonde and sometimes she's
oh,
a redhead.
after the yellow one, that the first one, the tealish one, so the first 6 books, those are supposed to be pictures of Anne. The next 2 books are supposed to be Anne's daughters. So Rainbow Valley is primarily about Anne's children, and Rilla of Ingleside is about Anne's youngest daughter. And it's actually a very interesting book. I feel like I said actually it's a very interesting book a lot. It is one of the few novels written about World War I by a contemporary of the war. So the book is about Anne's daughter's experiences as a very young woman living through the home front of World War I. And it's really like fascinating because I think World War II gets so much more attention, especially in America, like from American perspective. So it's just kind of a unique time capsule in that. And reading through it, you learn more about World War. Like I don't know what your experiences were, but my experience with American history education is like they could only pull you along so far, and by the time you get to the 1900s, they give you a brief summary of World War I, focus on World War II, and that's the end of American history. So, um, reading Rilla of Ingleside is actually a great way to supplement your World War I education, and it's very funny and very sad because it takes place in World War I. It makes you think, though, the Blythes are quoted. I talked about that earlier, how it was reissued version of The Road to Yesterday. Um, what got edited out of the Blythes are quoted are interludes where the family, Anne of Green Gables, grown-up Anne of Green Gables family, are talking about like World War II because it takes place as World War II is starting. And it has such a heaviness about it because and you don't realize when you read Rilla of Ingleside, there's an optimism underneath all the sadness. Like we will be done with this war, and this is the war to end all wars, and there will be no more war. We will suffer through this. We will sacrifice. We will lose our loved ones, and we will come out of it, and the world will be built anew. And the Blythes are quoted is heavy and depressing because it is the realization for Lucy Maud Montgomery and her characters that nothing changed and they're about to go through the same thing all over again. So that's The Road to Yesterday, the short story collection, gets rid of all of that. Like there's no interludes and that kind of tell you what's going on. It's just like Lucy Montgomery short stories. But when I read through the Blythes Are Quoted, that's kind of when like that historical context kind of hit for me. So oh, anyway, so this is my spinning shelf. Another gift from my husband. Mass market paperbacks look terrible on a shelf. They show every bit of wear and tear. They are not meant for display. So we moved around a bit when I was growing up. There's one library we had where a lot of their children's and young adult books were on spinning shelves like this, and they were not alphabetized or anything. So you'd spin the shelf around and like scroll through every like little thing to try to find a book that looked interesting for you. So when I shelved these, I just kind of threw them up there to kind of recreate that like sense of adventure. Um, for the most part, they are just not none of these books are very interesting in of themselves for a few exceptions. The exceptions being I have my dad's first edition paperback of Stephen King's The Eyes of the Dragon. It's in very, very poor shape, but I'm happy to own it. I think, oh, right there, you scroll down to it. Right there. It's the black book that you can't even see what it is because it's in very rough shape. In front of that is Talking to Dragons by Patricia Reed, and that's an actually interesting edition because she wrote that book. She's very famous for the Enchanted Forest Chronicles, and it's a 4-book series, and the book right there, Talking to Dragons, I think is the last book in the series, but it was the first book she wrote. So she wrote that book and then kind of wrote 3 prequels to it. But then she had to edit it to make it make sense with the prequel books. And this is the unedited original first edition. And in front of that is a first edition of her book, The Seven Towers, which is not my favorite, but it's just fun to have first editions of some of your favorite authors' books. But yeah, the rest are just there's going to be a lot of Agatha Christie. There's going to be a lot of Signet classic paperbacks. There's Anne McCaffrey's Dragon Drums and Shakespeare and a whole lump of Robin McKinley, who I adore her. I don't think anybody beats Robin McKinley for young adult fantasy novels. There are a whole chunk of those, but yeah, they're overall just well-beloved paperbacks. So, it's a fun way to have your books displayed without actually having to show the world that they're not maybe very good looking. So, Oscar Wilde's fairy tales, they're dark. They're not very peppy fairy tales, like, word to anybody who wants to look into those, and, oh, there's The Once and Future King, which is excellent, excellent book. If people are not aware that The Sword in the Stone, the Disney movie, is based off a book, you should be aware, and the book is fantastic. Oh, so, um, Walden, Outlander, um, Shogun, that was my great-grandfather's. I was just paging through it the other day, and there's a 1981 Milwaukee Brewers baseball schedule that he used as a bookmark in it. So, not interesting to the general public, but that was pretty interesting for me. A copy of Galsworthy's Modern Comedy. probably the last time it was issued in a mass way. I think that's a pretty old Princess and the Goblin on the right-hand side, but not first edition or anything special like that. Got F. Scott Fitzgerald, Robert Louis Stevenson, Gone with the Wind. I read that once when I think I was, like, 13, and I have not read it since, I'll admit, because being 13 and very naive, I did not know how the story was going to end, and I'm like, "I don't think I can reread this knowing what I know now." But I'd already purchased it, so it's there. Mhm. More F. Scott Fitzgerald and some Agatha Christie's and Interview with a Vampire. I have a Nathaniel Hawthorne book that a college professor was selling some of his old books, and I bought that very cheaply. Where the Lilies Bloom, I think, was my mom's growing up. I'm not really sure how I got that. This is very good. It's about a bunch of orphan kids who brush their teeth with sticks. And then just more, there's some Signet classics and Signet classics actually, as far as like mass market paperbacks go, they hold up fairly well. So kudos to them for not making them the absolute cheapest books possible when they publish them. Like their spines can actually hold up to reading without looking like they're about to fall apart. So Robert Louis Stevenson, I don't think gets read very much outside of Treasure Island either, and that's a bit of a pity because he's a great author. D.E. Stevenson, whose books I touched on recently, is a like not was like a great niece of his or something, or a cousin. They were related. So there's an author connection.
So that wraps up. Actually, no, we have the overflow.
Oh, the overflow pile. Yeah. There, let's see what's interesting here. Michelle Kwan, Heart of a Champion. Read that book like 12 times back in the day. It's really great. And there's an awesome glossary in the back where she explains the exact difference between all the different jumps the ice skaters do. That was a great book.
Did you watch the recent Winter Games?
Mhm. We got big into curling in this household. Yeah. I haven't read Moby Dick yet either. I'm very happy with that copy though, because what a great color that is. That I just got. I'm very excited to read it. Siddhartha is a great book. I tried to get into modern romance novels. I tried. I got 5 pages into Lady Guides of Fortune Hunting and I gave it up. English as She Is Spoke was one of Mark Twain's favorite books. Speaking of Mark Twain, it is a book that a man who spoke no English set out to write an English dictionary. I think, like, he translated Portuguese into French and then used a French dictionary to translate the French into English, and it makes, like, no sense, and the translations are very bad, and it's extremely funny.
Well,
So
I know there was a guy who didn't speak English and he competed in what's that game called where you line up the letters? The spelling game. I don't know why I'm blanking on it, but it was just kind of funny because he basically memorized the dictionary and he didn't speak English, but he just sort of somehow did it.
what do you memorize the dictionary? That's
It's not
wild.
Wordle, but it's the old-fashioned one.
Scrabble?
Scrabble, yeah.
Scrabble. Oh, wow. That must be tough to do. Yeah, these are just, um Guys and Dolls, it's based off the musical. Rough Riders, Teddy Roosevelt actually wrote that. Two-Way Murder, that publisher, whose name I cannot escapes me, is working through reissuing a lot of, like, classic British crime novels, so that's an example of one. That one had a terrible introduction. It was terrible because it said, "Fans of such and such novel by Agatha Christie will like the twist in this one," and referencing this particular Agatha Christie novel tells you exactly how that mystery was going to end, so that was a bit of a bummer. They got some Wodehouse, he's very funny. Another what to read after Jane Austen comes up a lot. Amor Taules, don't know how to say his name. He's a modern author, very good. Loved The Rules of Civility, and I think A Gentleman in Moscow is extremely famous and well regarded and got made into a series. Working my way through Dante right now for book club. My favorite Dante reference before I started reading Dante is in Elizabeth von Arnim's An Enchanted April. They are in Italy, and there's this old lady who says she can't speak to the servants because she only speaks the Italian of Dante, and they won't understand her. So, just my little Dante reference there. Then over in that pile, we've got another first edition Stella Gibbons that I tracked down before the reissue. Atlas Obscura, which is so much fun to read. A Gift of Joy of Hope by Pope Francis. Lies My Teacher Told Me, which should be like standard reading for people. The Magnificent Ambersons at a library book sale. Some Madeleine L'Engle, which should be with all of my unfeatured young adult novels in the basement. Some more Arthur Conan Doyle. Death Sentences, which is a book I had to buy for college. It's actually really interesting. It's about how corporate language is ruining real people language. Like, for example, like the phrase world class. It talks about the phrase world class. What does it mean to be world class? It doesn't mean anything. World is not a class. You have first class, you have second class. World class is not a thing that exists. So that's what that book is about. It's an interesting read. Like, if you're in the corporate world and people are talking about like low-hanging fruit and like all this other stuff, it's a book discussing the corporatization of language. And then Little Moments of Love, which is a comic book. They're really cute. They're cute comics.
Did you ever think about writing a novel?
I mean, I think every book person thinks they would like to write a novel, but I think I'm cynical enough to know better than to try. I think,
What about Wattpad or something like that?
what's Wattpad? What's Wattpad?
It's just like anybody can publish.
I don't know. I think if I ever did try something, I would really want it to be good, and I'd really want to put effort into it. And I think it'd be very disheartening in the modern era to do that when there are people who are very successful who are using AI to plop out books. It
Yeah.
kind of
Do
like
you
I
have any
don't
thoughts on, like, as a parent, getting your kids into the classics or just getting them into reading? Is there anything you do differently or special?
we we have a ton of books, kids' books at our house, and we just read. You read to your kids, you read them every day. I don't think either of my kids are gonna be readers like I was. For reasons, I've always been a reader, but then, like, anytime I've had any stress in my life, I've always turned to books. Like, sorta needed it as a crutch a bit more, and, I don't know, my son's big into nonfiction. He is big into nonfiction, and he reads books of naps and, but it's what everybody says. It kind of boils down to, like, read to your kids. If you want your kids to be readers, you have to read to your kids, and you need to show them that you read. And if after all that they don't like books, you have to point out, "This is the valuable book. Don't throw this out when mom's gone," and just hope for the best. Yeah, I
Do
just
you
tell
take them to Barnes and Noble?
we do pop into bookstores when we go shopping, and usually we come out with a book. So we have our own massive stack of Berenstain Bear books, but, like, they get gifted a lot of books. We're a big book gifting family, so Christmas, they get books, birthdays, they get books. The Easter Bunny brings books. So, you just gotta
Nice.
force it down their throat. Like,
Yeah.
"Suck
Cool.
books."
Well, is there any final thoughts you want to leave with people? Maybe, one of the themes we've had throughout is once you read Jane Austen, what do you read next? And
Yeah.
you've mentioned many, many different ones, but maybe you could give like a top three or, whatever you want to leave people with as we wrap up here.
Okay, top 3 favorite what to read after Jane Austen: Wives and Daughters by Elizabeth Gaskell, The Enchanted April by Elizabeth von Arnim, and my oh, then either Emily Eden's novels, so the semi-attached couple and the semi-detached house, or The Odd Duck, which would be Nightingale Wood by Stella Gibbons. Not Cold Comfort Farm, but Nightingale Wood. They all they're they're excellent. They're funny. They're witty and insightful and optimistic. It's kind of my, like, book theme. I like books that are optimistic. That's probably why I struggle with the Russian literature. It's perhaps slightly less optimistic.
Are there
So
any recommendations you'd like people to leave in the comments or anything else you'd like to hear from people?
oh, I like, the only reason I am on Reddit was to find book recommendations. I love, love, love book recommendations. I think just last night I had screenshotted a list somebody had made, like, "Oh, if you like this author, like, try these," and was looking up all of those recommendations. I think last year I went through a nonfiction phase based off a list of recommendations off Reddit, so love book recommendations. Um,
Actually, could you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think a lot of readers, they don't really get it that social media can be used to find book recommendations and meet other people that are really into reading. And I think, Reddit especially maybe can be sort of intimidating or you wouldn't necessarily think to get involved there. But I'm curious how you use Reddit. Like, what are the major ways you get value from Reddit? And are there any ways that you use it that maybe people wouldn't think to do initially?
sure. Well, I primarily started on Reddit because of Jane Austen. Like, the Jane Austen subreddit is a pretty good place, and if you're a book fan, you just need to have some outlet for, "I love this book." And one's husband, you feel bad for him because he's just sitting there and you're just like, "I have to tell you about this book." And he's nice and he sits and nods. But sometimes you want somebody else to be like, "I also love this book." So I only ever started on Reddit to be a part of the Jane Austen page. And it's a great page, very well moderated, very nice chats. And, like, there are women on that page who know everything about hair and clothing and customs and tea parties. Like, there are and men too, no offense, men, sorry, men and women who know everything, and it's amazing that you can interact with these people, and they're, like, genius knowledge people, and they're just there on Reddit to answer, like, questions and to correct you if you don't know something about something. It's incredible, but there is a subreddit, I think it's, like, "Suggest Me a Book," or book suggestions, I don't remember, but people are so people love people love books, and they love to tell you about their books in case you didn't pick up on that. Like, so if you say, "I'm looking for a turn of the century novel, this, that, and the other thing," somebody's gonna come along and recommend um, recommend something for you. Like, the I found a great thread. I searched for this thread. I found a great thread of, like, nonfiction books. I ended up reading, um, Into Thin Air, which is amazing, incredible book. The Lost City of Z, The River of Doubt, In Harm's Way, in Endurance about Shackleton. Like, these were excellent books, and I found all of them through a discussion on Reddit, and I don't know, I mean, like, I don't, um maybe there are people who have librarians who kind of perform that function in their life, but if you don't have a book expert, you might as well crowdsource it, like, crowdsource suggestions. Like, it's yeah, I think it's an incredible resource, and
You use
people
any other social media besides Reddit?
not really. I mean, I'm a millennial, and I got Facebook when it was cool, but Facebook's a little dodgy these
Yeah.
days.
Mm.
Um, yeah, no, I just think it's a great resource for finding books, and there's a subreddit, I think it's called, like, "What's That Book?" Or something like that. So if you read a book when you were 13 years old and you remember one paragraph about it and you write about it on that subreddit, somebody will come in and say, "It was such and such book by such and such a person." Like, there are people like, "I remember this book and the cover was pink and it had a picture of a snake on it," and somebody's like, "It's such and such a book," which is great because sometimes when you read a lot of books, some of them, they don't all stay in. Like, I read a whole series of books, they're Miss Silver detective stories. I could not tell you one thing that happened in them, but I know I read them. It's but so, yeah, it's a really valuable resource, I think. I mean, I think there are definitely corners of Reddit that, like, your average person walking down the street would not wanna touch with, like, a 1,000-foot pole, but the book corners are pretty good, I
Yeah,
think.
I agree. I agree. Um, so any final thoughts as we wrap up here?
Hmm, I don't know. I feel like I talked your ear off. So
It's been a lot of fun, and this is the first library of this kind to really get into Jane Austen and some of these other really important works. It's been a lot of fun, and yeah, people can say down in the comments if they have any suggestions or any questions, and I look forward to seeing what everybody thinks about this great bookshelf tour.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I guess my only final thought is, like, read old books. They're great. Like, and read old books that maybe you haven't heard of. They I don't know. But then at the same time, random tangent, just because they're old doesn't mean they're good. And sometimes books were forgotten for a reason. I have definitely stumbled upon those, but those were not going to be represented on the bookshelf. Those got booted to the free library. Sorry. Eh, thank you very much for having me on, and I, like, appreciated you reaching out and the time, and thank you.